I push Métis onward. The mass of wolves in quadrupedal form smells the air, then reluctantly parts before us. Their instincts, pushed by the curse, still see anything with 4 legs as prey. Fortunately, Métis does not behave like prey. At all. Some of the more adventurous wolves are still healing from having an ear nipped off. What can I say? Métis is a gourmet. It helps that we do not smell like their usual fare either. Finally, we arrive in front of Augustus' personal guard, an improvised squad resulting from remnants of packs brought together by revenge. They may not be the largest specimens, but they make up for it in aggression. They refuse to give way. Métis lets out a low-pitched neigh, the flesh-eating equine equivalent of "just try me." Before someone gets hooved into the frozen ground, the man of the hour steps forth. I have to admit that he looks better now than he did a few nights ago. His exhaustion left way to dark determination and his previously messy hair is now tied back, showing his square jaw and carved cheeks to his advantage. He wears only leather pants under a jacket left open to reveal the muscular chest underneath. With his grim air and the background of frozen wastes, he looks like some barbarian king in a raunchy novel. The wind blowing at my back prevents the wolf stench from coalescing into a noxious cloud of nauseating horror, allowing me to appreciate the moment. "What is it, Ariane?" he finally asks. "We have hit a hurdle and will need to conduct some measure of diplomacy." "Your presence would be appreciated," I state. Interestingly, Augustus will never take any orders, especially not in public. Even the most sensible instructions are answered by a silent glare. A well-formulated request will always come across, however. In this regard, he is abnormally rational. It makes communicating with him both easy and difficult. This time again, he can read between the lines. A nod and a raised fist are all it takes for his personal guard to split before him and open us a path back. The horde stops in the valley behind us as we move up the slope to a line of pines tucked along a ridge. Frost, Melusine and Melitone are waiting for us at the edge. Only Melusine and I are mounted right now, on our respective nightmares. We all wear armor, even Melitone, who will definitely not take part in the fight despite her insistence that she can take care of herself. "Are we ready?" I ask. "Yeah, let's do this," the servant replies with hunger in her eyes. Being sidelined from the conflict is eroding her patience, which I understand only too well. I take the center with Mel and Augustus to my right and Melusine and Frost to my left. The valley's pale light disappears as the snow-covered branches progressively block off the sky. Frost picks a pair of glasses from his pocket and casually places them on his nose, looking like a distinguished entomologist on a hike, never mind the cold. The stomping of hooves heralds their coming. 5 shapes emerge from the gloom, appearing seamlessly from behind trees as if they had been there all along. Lamellar armors, gruesome weapons, and dark expressions to match. Knights. More specifically, the usual squad plus Jimena. Sergei of the Kalinin is the only one mounted on a nightmare covered in mail. He himself wears a helm and carries with him a long spear. A massive 2-handed axe hangs from his back. The rest of his team has not changed much. Alec is still stoic, Alaric still smiling playfully with his hands twirling daggers, and Aisha gives no sign of recognizing me, eyes fixed forwards and face covered by her veil. No one knows yet that the Amaretta vampire and I are allied. "I think you owe us some sort of explanation," Sergei begins. "I don't owe you anything," I immediately retort in English, then stop when Jimena discreetly coughs. Her light protest curbs my anger. She is right, this is no time to be arguing. We are on a schedule. However, I continue, for the sake of cooperation, I will gladly inform you that we are on the way to Fenris' horde to kill him. Sergei's glance stops on Augustus, who studiously ignores him, then on the dense formation of transformed wolves down on the plain. They sit patiently on their haunches, looking towards where we disappeared with eerie focus, a sea of eyes twinkling in the moonlight. You are bringing an army of werewolves next to another army of werewolves and expect them to fight each other, he observes, and I recognize his use of English as a courtesy. Yes. Is your confidence based on facts? They have done it before, I reply, not particularly surprised by the knight's distrust. I notice that while Anatole was immediately dismissive, Sergei is merely dubious. My instincts tell me that he could be convinced. You there, the haughty knight says as he addresses the werewolf, will you really fight your own kind? An awkward silence descends on the assembly as Augustus stares Sergei in the eyes. His bravery is commendable, if foolish. I have not tried to dominate Augustus and I have no doubt that his status as leader affords him some degree of protection, but against a master. I would not bet on it. I intervene before the pissing contest degenerates and we accidentally end up at odds with some of the deadliest fighters on the continent. My dear Augustus, would you kindly inform Sir Knight as to what you intend to do to Fenris once we reach his horde, please? My packs will open the path, then I will face Fenris in single combat and slay him. With the horde under my control, we will return north. No you won't, Sergei retorts. Yes, he will, I pointedly insist. Are you betraying us, devourer? These creatures killed several of us. You are mistaken, Sergei. They killed several Rolands. If I may, Ariane. Melitone interrupts with a pleasant voice, as Constantine's representative in this matter, I believe I can bring this disagreement to a close. She turns to Sergei, whose expression has become more guarded. His caution is soon proven to be warranted. The speaker mandated Ariane to protect Detroit and bring the werewolf invasion to a close. I judge that Ariane's plan to dethrone Fenris and disband his army not only satisfies the Roland request, it does so in a way that significantly reduces the risks of further casualties on our forces. She acts under our orders and with our approval. The werewolves united once, they can do so again. We should purge as many as we can now, or they will spread again like an infestation. Sergei retorts. You can do so on your own free time. Our current objective is liberation, not extermination. The objective changed when the knight spits, before being interrupted by Melitone taking a step forward. Sergei frowns in disapproval before realizing who she speaks for. Constantine said you might react this way. He also said that under the accords, which your organization agreed on respecting while you operate on our territories, speaker-mandated missions take precedence over knight authority. He added, and I quote, if Sergei has difficulties understanding the standing agreement, I will be compelled to travel north and explain it to him in person. I will add that not only will it be an extremely unpleasant experience, he is also currently working on guardian golems for your Carpathian fortress. Who knows what unforeseen delays the project would face if he were to be disturbed. Frost and Augustus look on with interest as the knight squad leader grits his teeth. The number of hostile factions I am supposed to assist just bumped to 3. Watcher grant me patience, I just want to eat them all and be done. I can tell that Sergei has reached a decision when he slowly relaxes the death grip on his spear. I suppose it will be up to us to deal with the consequences of your short-sightedness, as usual. In the meanwhile, please do share your strategy so that we may coordinate progress. Such as it is. I explain the plan in English. The knights all stare in the distance as they attempt to visualize what we intend to do, except Jimena, who looks positively ecstatic. I must admit that it sounds both simple and actionable, Sergei says after a delay, I do have a few reservations. Do tell, I reply, expecting more nonsense. First, how can you be sure that the horn won't affect the other wolves? Would it not be counterproductive to make them stronger? It won't affect them the same way a firebolt does not explode in your face. Magic is about intent. Besides, it already worked once. Sergei nods and his gaze lingers on the artifact slung over my shoulders. I will have to be careful after the battle if I want to keep my word, which I do. If I can operate the horn, perhaps he can as well. Very well, Sergei continues, I was also wondering why you have to charge through the ranks. Can your champion not simply issue a challenge? I will take that one, Augustus interrupts. To my surprise, Sergei lets him. Fenris is a snake. He will delay us until he can have his skald blow the horn in turn. The only reliable way to force him to duel is through a violent challenge that he cannot ignore. I see. One last question, how certain are you that you can defeat him? Completely so. I have seen him fight before. I did not know. Augustus has remained tight-lipped about his past and I have not pried. I just hope that his confidence is warranted. Our whole plan hinges on it. Well, not entirely. If he loses the fight, I will assassinate his head skald then flee through Augustus' horde before Fenris can turn it on me. This course of events will most likely eliminate me from the contest, and yet I am committed now, and the appearance of the knights only confirms that I made the right choice. With their assistance, Lazaro will succeed then claim that he eliminated the werewolf threat. It will matter little that he had their help. No, I must gamble. Well, I am convinced. Your rationality and flexibility impress me, Ariane. Oh, wow. What a surprise, I can be rational. Who would have thought? I snap. All the tension of the last few days. The backstabbing, including the one I caused. The constant insults. Accommodating all those giant egos and more than that, the constant stink of the horde. And now this? I am slightly raising my voice at this stage, but I do believe that my slight annoyance is warranted. I only stop when I realize that Jimena is patiently patting my hand. She walked all the way to Métis without me realizing it. All the other vampires are staring at me with horror while Augustus looks strangely pleased. Melitone is smiling proudly and Frost has walked a few steps away, trying not to choke on his laughter. This appears to be a sensitive topic, Sergei finally says with some hesitation. There, Jimena continues with an amused grin. I cannot fathom what happened. I am normally so calm, my mind turned cold by my own nature. This outburst was so very human. Perhaps I am suffering from some sort of fatigue. I remember when fighting side by side with Loth against Ascendancy and their borrowed British forces. The fighting had gone on for days and towards the end, I had turned primal. Not rogue since I was still in control. Primal. All of my instincts were so close to the surface that every problem appeared as if they could be solved with overwhelming violence. I may be facing the opposite problem now. Working with the werewolves, assassinating Mornay and contending with the Coddies indirectly are political games. I may just need a good slaughter. A battle where I do not have to run. Sergei interrupts my musings. Ahem, yes. In any case, the plan is sound and we will support it. I will now share more about what we had planned ourselves. I perk up at this revelation as Jimena steps back and returns to her fellow knights without a word. I really love her for that, the little things she does without a word, without need for recognition. It conveys more affection than hours of discourse. We have been helping the Coddies for a night now. They are entrenched in a valley west of York, under siege by the army you mentioned since 5 days ago. Our plan was to have the vampires do a sortie, forcing a reaction from the man you called Fenris. Using that distraction, we would have flanked them and inflicted heavy losses before withdrawing. If possible, we would have killed their leaders too. Sortie. Are they not heavily outnumbered? Melusine asks. Quite so, but they have mobility and a fallback position. We also lack options, the Coddies only numbered 5 and lost a member on the first night. They have been conservative since then, but time is not on their side. How did they hold for a week? I ask with eyes narrowed. The first thing a Coddies does when investing a new territory is to build a fortress, Sergei patiently answers. Jimena nods to confirm this piece of information before explaining a bit more. Fortresses start as a sort of oppidum. My clan uses logs and packed earth to create a perimeter, then expands underground in a way that a handful of men can hold it for a long time. Vampires assist in the building, considerably shortening the time it would take to complete the work. I bet, considering that the average master can carry a trunk in one hand. If the Coddies manage to create a proper tower, the werewolves will have lost the numbers advantage. I doubt that they carry any siege equipment either. We should still hurry. Why is time not on their side? Frost asks in turn. Sergei clearly hesitates. Rank is paramount for us, and Frost's position is still unclear to him. Vampires need blood, more so if they are constantly fighting, I explain. The Coddies lost half of their mortal followers on the first night. Some are getting dangerously close to exhausting their patience, Sergei continues. The mortals may not understand the full implication of what such a loss incurs. Without an adequate supply of blood, the vampires may end up destroying the minds of their mortals, and some could even turn rogue. Can they not escape? The vampires may break through, if they sacrifice all of their followers. We all understand that it will not happen. Enough questions, we need to move now. I propose that you knights proceed as planned, but from another angle. The Coddies attack first, you flank them, and once both diversions are in progress, Augustus and I will charge. Melusine and Frost will cover our approach, as planned. Is this agreeable? I ask. It is, Sergei replies. Aisha will signal the Coddies to attack with a spell. We will wait a minute before engaging ourselves. You will probably face the least resistance if you wait a bit. Both Augustus and I signal our agreement. We could be forced to disengage. Can you signal us when you attack so that we know we have held their attention for long enough? Oh, trust me, I reply, you won't miss it. For the first time since I met him, Sergei smiles. The little I can see of his mouth lifts upward and his entire demeanor changes. It will be a pleasure to see you at work, Ariane of the Nirari. After you are done here, you should consider joining us for a spell. We could use a vanguard of your caliber, he says. Vanguards are the knights' combat experts. Did he just try to recruit me? I turn to Jimena, who nods emphatically. Well, I could consider it in the far future. For a while. If my territory is secured. After all, they present some of the best opportunities to collect allies or blood samples. I consider the knights as they leave. We successfully coordinated in a peaceful and mostly respectful manner despite my apprehensions. Perhaps Anatole was the exception, and the rest of them are not so bad that I cannot work with them. Of course, I will never fully trust them either. They did not oppose him as he was skirting the rules, after all. Let us depart. We must still find our quarry, I tell my allies. Melusine and Frost assent and leave as Augustus and I return to the horde behind us. I can hardly believe it, but with the knights on our side, our chances have significantly improved. I hope nothing comes to ruin our plan. The trip back is anticlimactic. I return at the tip of the formation where Métis is currently munching on yet another ear while Augustus returns to its heart. We move forward at a slow pace to allow the others to sweep for sentinels. Valleys lead to forests, and to ridges in turn. The night is beautiful, but I have difficulties enjoying it because of the smell and the unreliable allies at my back. The horde is incredibly quiet, for its size, yet even subdued their auras are too powerful for me to ignore them. Their constant presence weighs on my mind step after step. Only the reminder of what is to come relieves my overtaxed patience. We are going to attack. That means an all-out charge. Finally, I am done running, scheming and planning. I can let go. Soon. Finally, I hear it. A clamor of flesh and roars erupt to our right. Frost signals us from a line of trees before running to the side with his mages. The path is clear. I spot Melusine dragging a corpse away from a thicket as we enter it. Another clamor sounds, further away. The knights have entered the fray. And then we see it. The untapped wilderness falls before us in a large plain dotted with farms, all of them collapsed husks of charred wood. To our right, a mass of wolves in tight ranks face off against four flickering shades. The group tries to corner them, not committing too much while the vampires are forced to inflict superficial wounds before falling back. They are the largest group. Far away in front of us, the knights have engaged a second group of wolves, close to 100. They are much more brutal and effective, and several corpses already litter the ground. From the gestures, it appears that Fenris has sent the ferals to cover his flank. Finally, a bit to our left, a smaller group waits in a loose circle around a fortified encampment. Large tents and cages dot the ground, and in its middle stand 3 men. The first sits on a throne of bone and leather, clad in a garish white pelt like a raider king. His long black hair and black beard offer a sharp contrast with light eyes and pale skin. Next to him stands a bald man with a hawkish nose and a vicious smile carrying a horn much like my own. On the other side, a veritable mountain of muscle with the face of a caveman looms menacingly. Pray. I turn to the line of wolves behind me. They are looking forward to the man on the throne with an intensity one never expected from such animalistic creatures. I feel a burning resentment, a deep-seated rage that dug into their heart and now fuels the coal of their anger. They lick their chops, hackles raised. Behind them, their leader waits. Augustus gives a single nod. They are ready. The world is waiting. The enemy skald has not used his horn in the few minutes that have passed, or he did it far enough away that it doesn't matter. I stare at the circle below us. This is not how it should be. A leader of the pack should be among his fighters, in the thick of battle. Even I can tell that he is the wrong champion for his kind. I bring the horn to my lips. Augustus said I should be as instinctive as possible. I am no werewolf and some of the effects of the artifact will be lost. I must call to the lowest common denominator between us, and I have just the perfect memory to draw on. I close my eyes and remember. Black Harbor. Belinda is dead at my feet, her resistance shattered by a point-blank range canister shot. I drank what life still flowed in her veins and destroyed her batteries. Now, the Choctaw warriors, Dalton, Loth and I will lead the charge on the ascendancy flanks. The key of Beriah will not be theirs. The herald dies tonight. The red-clad infantry is to our front, slightly down. They think their flanks covered. I dive more deeply into the memory, focusing on my emotions and sensations. Taste of blood. One prey felled. One more to devour. Night. Wind on my face. Warriors by my side. Friends. The prey does not know that we are coming. They are weak. We move. It starts slowly. We march. We trot. We go faster. We are as inevitable and relentless as the tide. Back in the present, I pour my aura into the horn. I do not hold back. A veritable torrent of power fills the body, nestles into every bony crevice, ignites every crimson rune. It shines like fresh blood on the snow. We are running now, but nobody makes a sound. Manic grins to the sides. They do not know we are coming, and this will be a perfect slaughter. We will scream our rage, our delight and our lust for their lives as they turn. As they realize they are doomed. And just like that time, my mind is overwhelmed by another memory. Sand. A scorching sun made almost pleasant by the dry heat of the desert. Rocks crushed under the rolling wheels of war chariots as men in bronze armor with glaives and bow charge forward. We are the elite of Queen Semiramis. Those who stand before us will fall. This is how it has been, how it will always be. At our front, the prince rides and laughs and shoots his hunter bow. A serrated arrow skewers a man through the chest at an impossible range. Once more, he claims the first kill. The chariots smash into packed infantry. They shatter and fall. All three visions meld into one. The present, with the horde of eager wolves behind me, the past with the Choctaw war band and the stolen moment of a distant history. All merge into one emotion, one overwhelming imperative. The need to conquer, to make them pay, and the absolute confidence in my own power. As unbridled energy disappears into the thrumming instrument, I realize a truth I had never contemplated. The werewolves are not the apex predators. They had to bow to Fenris and they had to face us. A part of them must know this. A few nights of freedom do not erase years of servitude. They are not the deadliest creature tonight. But they wish they were. They have come here to reclaim their freedom, and I can make it happen. I will share with them those instincts of mine, the thirst, the fury, and the unshakable belief that I cannot be stopped. I do not need to be too close to them after all. Even a sliver of how I feel now will send them howling down in the valley below. I let the three images superimpose and keep powering up. The horn now shines like a beacon in the night. It begs to be released as hairline fractures appear along its body. They are prey. The trap is closed. The game is over. Now, I can let go. I hunt. We hunt. Come and partake. I blow the horn. The sound takes me by surprise. It starts low and deep, incredibly deep. A horn should not be able to produce this sound even if it were 4 times the size. The vibration spreads all across the land, smothering every other noise. Then, it grows sharper and reaches a stable pitch at a frequency that shakes me to my very core. Just one note, pure and smooth. The note becomes richer as harmonics develop up and down until it feels like I am not blowing one horn but 1,000, echoing across faraway places, across ages, all calling for the exact same thing. Charge. I have no need to push Métis. We gallop down the slope carried by a tidal wave of snarls and howls. The horn breaks in my hands but the call does not stop. It still carries us forward with the ineluctability of the avalanche. Fenris Guard gathers in a tight block. Amusing. Futile. We are so fast now that the wind pushes my hair back. We are no longer charging. We are falling forward as if, for an instant, gravity pulled us straight instead of down. The enemy werewolves in bipedal form are right in front of us. They already waver. Deep inside they must know that their efforts are pointless. The grin on my face widens. I cannot help it. Breathtaking beauty. Then, impact. I roar. I push forward into the saddle and catch one under the jaw. I lift it off its feet to crash against the next, I stab another. Métis smashes into dense muscle, barely slowing. Behind us, our own horde reaches the enemy lines. Now I understand why Augustus kept them in their 4-legged form. Like that, they are packed tight while only offering powerful backs covered with protective hair to their foes. The first ranks do not jump. They stay close to the ground and catch legs, pulling their prey under to be smothered and flayed. I always thought the bipedal version was more dangerous but I am proven wrong. The 4-legged version is more stable, and Augustus' troops take full advantage of it. Then the moment passes, and I stop thinking. There are only jabs and sweeps, Métis' hooves falling on a skull or sent flying backwards into ribs. I laugh as they try to reach me and fail, just before they are caught. And soon the last creature falls and I am on open ground. The 3 prey are before me. I smile because I am happy. Once more, I got to experience something precious and unique. Now, screams the false king. His horn-toting servant raises an old-fashioned wand and screams something, I care not what. Red chains emerge from it and snake around, trying to encircle me. I raise a hand and let the spell slither over my armored body. I allow the immaterial links to ensnare my form as the giant mountain of muscle turns into its bipedal form and charges me. I permit it, and I laugh. I laugh and laugh at their bumbling efforts and pathetic ambush. They are so slow and blind to their own failings. They do not understand. I raise my eyes to the sky and its quirky denizen. I grin with all the joy I feel and invite it to play. I want to show them. Let me. In my mind fortress, the statue of the transformed herald twists and melts into a new form made of a mass of tendrils in an alien harmony. Its blue aura shifts to the familiar purple. In the realm of reality, my claws flash the same color and I tear the chain apart. The skald falls back, eyes bleeding. The mountain of muscles is already committed. Time for the appetizer. Ducking under its arms, I grab the open muzzle with one clawed hand before dragging forward and down. I use my other on his massive biceps and bite mercilessly into the jugular. The creature is so large that I cannot get in properly. It turns into a game. The big creature tries to escape, and I try to keep it more or less standing by shifting my posture. Its free hand rakes ineffectually against Loth's unyielding armor. Delicious. I am surrounded by a sea of wolves and they do not intervene because I do not smell like an intruder. I belong here, feeding on one of their strongest warriors in all impunity. A monster among monsters. And I like it. It is still weakly struggling as I take my time and glare at Fenris. I could have killed him 50 times already, but I did not. I gave my word. All is as it should be. Augustus passes me by with solemn steps. When he stops in front of Fenris, something peculiar happens. In the valley, the din of battle ceases as the collective aura of the packs merge once more, but this time, it also includes our own horde. The merged power is wilder, more organic than what the horn can achieve, yet at the same time, it also feels more stable. A little bit of my call remains in the surrounding mood and the lust for violence runs high. Even the Cotties and Sergei's group stop in a strange truce. The night holds its breath as Augustus steps forward and stops before the throne. Fenris stands, pale eyes shining with resentment. You dare ally with one of them? Traitor, the false king snarls. Enough games, Fenris. I have seen how honorable you were when you killed my brother. Fenris frowns, then his eyes widen in surprise. You were there, he says. Yes, I was. The call of your horn paralyzed me, but I had all the time in the world watching you slay the greatest of us, you mongrel. You did not even have the courage to face him in battle 3 against 1. A king must value results above all else. I united the packs. Not that fool you grieve. A king must value his people above all else. You do not have a united people, just a patchwork of repressed packs you need a magic trick to control. You would know how little it means if you understood the curse, but your vision is as shallow as your knowledge. You are a fake king with a fake name, and if you had a sliver of intellect, you would know that Fenris was a poor title to claim. You see, the Fenris wolf was never the king. Odin is king. Fenris is his killer. Augustus lets his heavy coat drop on the floor, soon joined by his leather trousers. And tonight, I will strip you of this name, as well as everything else. Come. My ally changes to his gigantic two-legged form. To his credit, the false king does the same with no hint of fear. Gray on my side, black on the other. Both creatures are at least twice the height of an adult human. They lunge and lock arms, each trying to force the other into submission. Then, just as quickly, they separate and fight by swiping claws. They do not turn around each other to test their defenses as human fighters would. The combat is immediately intense and without mercy. I admit to being pleasantly surprised. I never had the chance to properly duel a wolf since I am much faster and aim to kill. In truth, both Augustus and his foe are skilled fighters. They move with grace and confidence and stay light on their feet. They feint, dodge and counter with an expertise that can only stem from practice and perfect control over the curse, a human mind and bestial instincts working together in harmony. Augustus feels cleaner and more poised. He has the reach advantage and makes use of it by keeping his distance. Fenris, on the other hand, is wilder, but he has a large collection of techniques he draws on to overwhelm his opponent. His style is vicious and reckless. They appear to be evenly matched. Soon, both sport deep furrow on the arms and chest, but none of the wounds hamper their skill, or indeed, their spirit. Eventually, I start discerning patterns in their technique, and so, apparently, does Fenris. Augustus jabs twice and tries to follow up with a hook-like sweep. His opponent anticipates the third movement and gets in his guard, clawing the biceps and sending Augustus tumbling. Fenris wastes no time capitalizing on his success. He throws himself at his opponent's turned back. In a surprise move that leaves me appreciative, Augustus throws his leg back in a strange kicking movement I had never seen before. His clawed paw catches the black werewolf under the chin and he, in turn, falls to the ground. What follows is a series of short exchanges relying once more on wrestling before they disengage. I get it now. Werewolves win in a single strike. All those wounds they inflict on each other only serve to prepare that one opening that will give them victory. In this regard, we are strangely similar, though while we focus on the heart, they appear to focus on the neck. Augustus is slowing down. The bleeding cuts on his left arm limit his range of motion, and I see pain in his eyes every time he moves it. Fenris is not looking too fresh either, but he has yet to suffer any debilitating injury. Augustus does it again. Jab jab, then hook, and just as last time, Fenris gets into his guard. I smile because I see how this will end. Augustus is a cunning warrior indeed. As the black werewolf goes to strike the biceps again, the grey one's jaw clamps on his right clavicle. Fenris yelps in pain. Rather than savaging the wound, Augustus twists his head weirdly. There is a loud snap. I force myself not to wince at that sound. There goes the clavicle. Augustus falls back to avoid the return swipe and attacks with renewed fury. I watch him circle his now losing foe and understand why he would make such a good king. When he was wearing his human skin, he used his troop's four-legged form to its best advantage, showing an understanding of the curse and the wolf. When he was in cursed form, he showed human adaptation in his combat style with deceit and a few unexpected movements. His merging of mind and instincts is truly impressive. It may even rival my own. As the fight drags on and Augustus calmly harries his foe, I keep staring with rapt attention. I am no longer so immersed in the magic as to ignore the fear of failure, but this time, there is no twist of fate. No last-minute cheat to steal my victory. The battle finishes without surprise as my champion methodically picks apart Fenris until the fallen king rolls to expose his throat. When he submits, the collective aura of the wolves settles, somehow. Up until now it had been, for lack of a better word, suspended. Like a held breath. Now, the power sighs and attaches itself on the shoulders of the victor. The man standing and the one on his knees slowly shift back to human form. Fenris' face is a mask of fury as he cradles his mangled arm. Take it then, take my life's work and ruin it with your pithy dreams, but let me go. I realize that Augustus can indeed choose to exile the deposed sovereign. It is his choice. But we had an agreement, and he turns to me, a question in his cold eyes. I smile and give him the barest of nods. The new king returns his focus to the killer of his twin. He shows nothing, no joy, no relief, not even a trace of satisfaction. You may leave and take your horn-toting underling with you, he states in a calm voice. I turn and realize that the skald is still next to me with the blood of the feedback now dried on his lower face. The improvised mage drops the artifact he still holds and runs to his leader. He helps the man to his feet and, together, they limp away. They leave the circle of werewolves under the glare of many. Not a single cursed one steps up to follow them. Once they have left the group, the two transform again and start running. To their left and right, I see vampires keeping their distance. There is no need for words. I do not call for Métis. She steps up next to me, her heavy hooves pounding on the snow the only loud noise. When we go past Augustus, our eyes meet, and I see the first true hint of feelings in his features tonight. For a single instant, his control slips to reveal a mix of dark emotions that belies his calm aura. The first is a deep hatred, buried and fiery like the heart of a volcano. The second is immeasurable sorrow, not at the fleeing figure but at the one who should be there instead. I see it now. Augustus has always been an outsider. It was not he who was meant to carry the mantle of authority. It was his twin brother. He only stepped up because there was no one else. Victory must taste like ash to him. And then the moment is gone, and we ride forth. The sea of creatures seamlessly parts before us. Fenris is banished. That means the other wolves will not touch the pariah. I, however, am not a wolf. 3 out of 3. Tonight will be such a feast. Métis snorts. Yes, yes, you can have their ears. She gallops faster, the glutton. 11 vampires stand around 2 corpses. Melusine silently took her place by my side, while on the left, the Night Squad and Jimena arrayed themselves in AV formation. The last face of this uneven triangle is formed by the Coddies. Lazaro and another master stare at Fenris remains with glassy eyes. Next to them, a woman with dark curls and a man with grey eyes under blonde hair show various expressions of grief and regret. Their party has suffered the most from this adventure. It occurs to me that we have reached a critical mass. 400 werewolves could overwhelm anything short of a battle lord if the vampire were to stand and fight. With 9 masters, we have an army. In theory. What happens now? Lazaro asks with a wary voice. As per our agreement with the speaker, we follow Ariane's plan. Their warlord Augustus will lead his packs north and disperse them. Sergei answers in a tired voice. Lazaro nods, seemingly resigned. His companion does not. Is that it? Was your outrage just a show? He hisses with obvious hatred. You are in no position to criticize me, Reyes, and particularly not before our friends, Lazaro retorts with a chastising glare, but the other is unfazed. Your friends, perhaps, not mine. You can take your honor and image and go greet the dawn. Last warning Reyes, you have exhausted my patience. Is that a challenge? Yes. The words were exchanged in a clipped, fast tone. The rest of us do our best not to stare. This is unprecedented for me. Until now, all vampires had stuck to a strict etiquette. This public outburst surprises me greatly. What manner of conflict could have caused 2 warriors who have fought side by side to despise each other so? I accept your challenge. Witnessed by the knights, Sergei announces with obvious regret. Ahem. Melusine discreetly bumps my arm. Witnessed by Clan Nirari. Witnessed by Clan Lancaster, she says in turn. The duel will take place before our fortress in half an hour. Make sure your affairs are in order, Reyes. And the same to you. The Coddies then split up. The masters disappear, each in one direction. The 2 courtiers remain, looking quite lost. They exchange a glance then leave together at a much slower pace. The awkwardness remains. Such an embarrassing display, unworthy of us. The only good thing is that there were no mortals to witness our shame. We will go to the Coddies' hold, Ariane, Sergei says with a complicated expression. Can I count on you to make sure your allies vacate the area? Yes. And soon, only Melusine and I are left. We inspect the mass of werewolves walking back to their camp in a strange mix of elation and grief. Some are in wolf form, some, in human. There is some fighting, some crying and a lot of hugging. Augustus and a few of his lieutenants are at the tail of the formation, helping along the most apathetic members. The ferals have been rounded and corralled, for now. Could you please get Frost and Melatonin to the hold while I talk to Augustus? The redhead blinks and returns her focus to me. Very well. Oh, and one last thing, I add, because I am now certain, you have proven yourself over the past few days. If you want to take over the north, it is yours. If we win, she replies with a small smile. She is right. The contest is not over until Constantine passes judgment. I do believe we have an advantage now, but it will also depend on whether the speaker considers an Augustus-led horde as a greater danger or not. Melatone's support does not imply her brother's approval. Melusine runs to the trees and I leave Métis, who had impatiently been waiting behind, to snack on prime wolf cuts. I walk back to Augustus on foot, taking my time. From that distance, the horde is a strange thing held together by some vague herd instinct. The packs, once united, now start to dislocate in units of varying sizes. I am reminded of a drunken crowd at the end of a summer feast, only, with more sorrow and slightly less clothes. They are a sorry lot. When I reach Augustus, even his guards only give him a passing glance before turning their efforts to the most catatonic members of the group. Many of them are women, I notice. It figures. The leader himself is still standing strong to offer a powerful ode to those who look up to him for comfort. His monolithic aura shows no weakness to those with inferior senses. Only my own expertise reveals the turmoil underneath. Ariane, he soberly greets. How are you doing? I ask, both out of concern and out of respect. Now is not the time to be introspective. I suppose, I reply. It takes a minute before he finally asks his question. So, what happens now? You can leave as promised. The other vampires will adhere to the bargain I made. That is tremendous news, he says with a heavy sigh. He rolls his shoulder under the coat which he has donned once more, and I can tell that the burden on his mind has lightened ever so slightly. You should probably still leave quickly. I know. We will walk north as soon as possible. My new pack and I will dispose of the ferals, in a humane way. I do not speak. What is there to say? How would I feel if I had to kill Jimena after she turned rogue? Words of comfort would not suffice. I am concerned about food. We are running out of supplies and we have no way to sustain such a large group. I am sure I could negotiate the purchase a herd or two, I inform him after thinking about it. It would be best if the risk of creating more ferals was reduced, in case starvation pushes some over the edge. That would be appreciated. I have no way to repay you for now, but I would consider it a favor. It is done, I declare. I always have a small stash with me when traveling with many mortals. It will be enough to buy a few dozen sheep from nearby villages, even if we must pay a premium. Good. One last thing before I forget. Your, minion was looking for you. Geoffrey, you mean? I reply, thinking about the little blabbermouth. Yes. He's over there. I follow Augustus' finger to Geoffrey's scrawny form. The little goof is waving frenetically with a stupid smile plastered on his face from the back of the formation. June stands next to him looking bored. With a frown, I join them feeling like I am being summoned. Hey boss woman. When are we leaving? What do you mean, we? Well, I said I'd be your man, right? So that means I gotcha follow you to your town, right? Come on, you wouldn't throw me out like an old sock, would you? Forcing me to go back on my word like a scoundrel. Was I not a good lad, he asks with puppy eyes. June's eyes roll in their sockets. Well, I suppose you were useful, true, I admit reluctantly. It's settled then. Me and my friends will live on your land and sniff out your foes and piss on their doors and whatnot. Hold on, I interrupt, what friends? Come on boss woman, I told ya I was a leader, yeah. There are plenty of lasses and lads here who don't want to return north. You know, on account of losing everything, the horrible memories, and abuse. They can come with and we will all do the things. All the things. Great hunts all around. Your own personal horde to call, except on weekends. And during the full moon, yeah. A handful of girls and 2 boys of uncertain age detach themselves from the stragglers. Their faces show a mix of fear and determination. They did honor their promises. Well, I suppose it would be acceptable, I concede. Having a handful of werewolves at my beck and call would certainly be an advantage. I would perhaps have the prestige of being the first vampire to command such a group. As for the smell, there are plenty of forests and wild lands around. I can probably buy them a farm out of the way until they are needed. No sooner have I accepted, than 10 other wolves detach themselves from the group. Then 20 more. Then another 20. Eventually, over 50 werewolves stand in a half circle around the very proud and very naked young man. That's settled then, thanks boss woman. Everyone, follow June to the camp and grab some clothes. We must link up with Frost's lads before dawn, he yells to the crowd. I smile and pretend that I did not just get played like a fresh daisy by a butt-naked gutter snipe half my age. Well done, Eerie, queen of the smelly mutts. Well done indeed. Now you need to buy a whole bloody village with attending woods. Farewell, my savings I had stashed to build myself a gun factory. Farewell. Thine demise is mine to bear. Out, brief candle. The group I just took ownership of gathers in a large pack that now walks with a more determined step. Their cohesion separates them from the rest of the horde, and so does their appearance. I notice that many of the members look younger and that almost half are women, a significantly higher proportion than normal. And then a shape emerges from the retreating mass. A man I had not seen for a long time. Alistair's sandy hair is the same, but his green eyes are now deep-seated in a face made more angular by hunger. Mr. Locke, I greet him with a smile. The man stops and his posture changes. He stands straighter, and pretends to salute me with an imaginary hat. The move is elegant, and I find myself chuckling. Ariane. A pleasure as always. I apologize for my state of undress as I remember that nakedness makes you uncomfortable. Well, if you turn to your left, you will see hundreds of butt cheeks quivering on their way to a camp so. You have grown accustomed to it. I have pushed those sights to the back of my mind, and after this crisis is over, I will have to paint 10 landscapes to wash away the sight of all those genitals. Ah yes, a lot of painful memories were made here, the man announces somberly, at least it is over. What will you do? I ask to distract him. Alistair shakes his head before focusing on me again. Did I mention that my father was a doctor? The call to heal remains. A lot of people here will need help to recover and I will provide it. We need a larger pack for a while, and Augustus has the power to bring us together. Besides, he, most of all, needs help. I wanted to ask, I see no elders among you. Do you also never age? No, we can age, albeit more slowly. We were just not given the opportunity to do so, he replies with a bitter smile, enough sadness. I came here to tell you that we would take the last horn with us. I almost forgot about that. Fair enough. Gathering tools of control is unwise if the would-be controlled are aware that you are doing it. And also return this. Here, he says, and gives me a bramble. The root-like appendage is still lively despite the current season. Its many thorns shine ominously, ready to rend the flesh of those foolish enough to approach it. Alistair is holding it by its severed base, which appears to have been cut by a tool of unnatural sharpness. In fact, it looks eerily familiar. Those thorns line the walls of my mind fortress. Alistair, where did you get that? I ask in a deceptively calm voice. It grew where you broke the chains, Ariane, and then it fell off. I figured that you would not want others to notice. Not to worry, I doubt that anyone else paid attention during the fight. I see, I reply. I pick up the strange piece of vegetation between two talons. It flashes purple and disappears into nothing. All right. Consider me disturbed. I raise my eyes to the watcher but I get nothing. It feels more distant now that the main event of the night is completed. You are a woman of many secrets, Ariane, Alistair continues, his eyes as wide as saucers. Indeed. I just wish the secrets were not kept from me as well. Please forget what you just saw, yes. My lips are sealed. Good. The conversation comes to an awkward close as I stare speechless at my now empty hands. I cannot fathom what just happened. I need to consult with Torin. He will know something, or whom I should talk to. In the meanwhile, I have a duel to bear witness to and I am already quite late. We gather in a circle, spaced evenly. There are 10 of us in battle regalia, most still covered in drying blood but none hurt. 12 fighters in total. A force sufficient to depopulate a small city in a single night. Of course, and given the occasion, I would prefer to attack the 12th man. Constantine's torturer has an air of meekness that I do not trust, and by his side, an executioner axe hangs with its blade well used. He was not supposed to interfere, but I assume that a clause in his orders permits him to defend himself. Behind us, the stocky form of the Cadi's hold offers a fitting background to this scene from another age. A duel under the stars, for honor and glory. All the mortals keep their distance, including Melitone, who is currently standing next to a curious Frost. The two opponents slowly walk from the fort's interior, now clean and proper. Lazaro gets in first. He wears an old-fashioned ensemble that makes him look like a conquistador or an opera villain, in yellow with trims of gold. In contrast, Reyes has chosen red. The angry color clashes against the background in a statement that is addressed as much to Lazaro as it is to us. I still have no idea what would cause such a rift between the two allies. I was late and could not afford to ask questions. Now the time to do so has passed. The atmosphere is heavy with the promise of a violence, and no lust for vengeance or retribution comes to make us forget that one of us will be ash before the hour is done. There will be no winner here tonight. Before we begin, we knights are in the habit of seeking a last-minute arrangement. Can you two, who were once friends, not reach an agreement and let reason prevail? Have you not already lost enough? For the death of my servant and friend I demand the punishment of Lazaro's little minx. I will have satisfaction, one way or another. Miguel's death was his own doing. You will not touch a hair from my servant's head. I won't have to, because she will not survive your fall, Lazaro. I should have spiked myself the night I decided to follow you. Yes, you should have. They draw. Sergei sighs dejectedly before letting them loose. You may begin. They launch themselves at each other with a resentment that only a broken friendship can bring. Rather than anger or fear, they show expressions of outrage mixed with anguish, and for the first time in my life, I find myself regretting having to see such a spectacle. Lazaro fights with a sword and dagger while his foe favors a foil. Reyes is more nimble, but the Cadi's leader compensates by forcing him back through powerful swings. I note in passing that I could probably kill either of them, though fighting them both would be impossible. Eventually, the challenger finds an opening, but it proves to be a ruse. Lazaro masterfully baited him into an attack and manages to parry with his dagger at the last moment. Though the foil draws a dark line across his flank, Lazaro's counter-strike is devastating, carving his opponent's chest almost in twain. The combat ends shortly afterward with a stab and a sweep. The body falls on the ground with a burst of blue flames. Gray ash against stained snow. Only sobs come to greet the victory. With 2 red lines marring his cheeks, Lazaro cleans his blades and carefully replaces them in their sheath. Sergei's voice rings hollow as he announces the obvious result. I look at the ground and contemplate my own mortality. If Jimena had been slightly wrong, this is all that would have remained of me on the arena's sand all those years ago. The Kadi's master had been centuries old. How much knowledge had he accrued, how many lives did he touch, to finish here like this? I am not sure that I like this resolution very much. To my surprise, Lazaro turns to me after he is done. All the other vampires have already moved away to leave him to his grief. I apologize for this display, S.E., Aura. A shameful end to a shameful attempt. If you still want Illinois, it is yours. I withdraw from the competition, he declares, then turns away. Melusine walks up to me. She had been waiting nearby. She crosses her arms but says nothing. Melitone joins us as well, her striking and confident face now showing some distress. I believe congratulations are in order, she starts hesitantly. At first, I keep silent as I feel a small tug in my essence. It reminds me of those calls of fate that have served me well so far, only this time it appears more deliberate. I need a walk. I will return soon, I answer, my rebuke to her remark left unsaid. I turn around and walk to the closest edge of the forest. I slowly cross the packed snow, many prints bearing witness to days of battle and maneuvering. I quickly reach the woods and hide under the canopy. Then, I follow a small path that snakes between several rocks up to a clearing. I stand facing a tall stone raised like a menhir, with a wind-battered pine tree at its top. The tug stops. I smile in defeat. I am after all, reaping the consequences of my actions. And so, like all good audiences played by the actors, I clap. The sounds echo throughout the tiny opening. In the distance, a bird takes flight. And from behind the stone, a man emerges, his hair the color of gold and his eyes like two spheres of amber. He walks with absolute confidence and bows with graceful disdain. Incredible performance, Sinead. I can but wonder how you did it. Must you? Or you could just accept my genius for what it is, and not let knowledge pollute the mystique I aim for, the Lycian casually declaims as he approaches me. Do I need to know? I want to know. There was no way you could have predicted the duel. Of course, there were ways. Violence was one of the possible outcomes of the conflict between those two. Lazaro could also have called for a trial. But then, a trial would have shown the Kadi's fragmenting to a speaker who favors harmony above all else. And if Lazaro had lost, why, the Kadi's would have been disqualified by the death of their candidate. Sinead is quite close now and I taste something manic in his aura, something that seeks release but cannot, and I think I know why. This thick reality constrains him, and the height of winter only makes those shackles heavier. The prince is suffering and at the same time, he is pleased by his success. The storm of emotion erodes his normally unflappable character. Sinead rests his finger below my jaw and pushes up until our eyes are level. You are still a child, Poppet. We Lycians do not play with stochastic events, we use them as a veil of deceit. A word from yours truly, a few falsified letters, and two servants who should have known better found their way out of the Kadi's defenses. A dangerous tryst at a desperate time. A passing patrol. Tragedy strikes, and here we are. Rhea's servant loses his life while Lazaro's does not, thus creating a rift that cannot be bridged. Sorrow leads to resentment, for who is to blame? I place my hand against his chest to push him away before he gets too close. He is warm under my palm, with an enticing perfume. My jaw aches with the desire to kill him because he touched a servant, and yet such a worthy lover he would be. I do not need to control every occurrence to guide a plot to its satisfactory conclusion, my dear. Schemes are not strongboxes to shackle but waves to ride, the man continues. He is flirting with danger and I think he likes it. It annoys me because the burden of control is placed solely on me. Was the show to your satisfaction, Poppet? I am very much impressed, I reply in Lycian, and I am. To control events to such a degree with so little time to prepare involves a large amount of skill and just the tiniest bit of luck. Impressed? I am amazed. I only wish you had not killed the servant. Ah, yes, the old taboo on leaving the pets alone. You are but victims of your nature, puppet. Why do you try me so? I reply with a frown. Think nothing of it, my dear. I am merely suffering from intense frustration and shall return to your home base promptly. Why, I believe your dream mage would enjoy my company. What? Leave the poor thing alone. And Merrick too. Oh, the grieving widow. It has been long since I last had guilty sex. Get out. I take my leave, the man replies. He steps back behind the rock and his aura disappears. In one moment, only the tracks in the snow confirm that our meeting was not a phantasm. Even his smell is gone, and I cannot hear a heartbeat. I could track him, but I will not. He helped me tremendously tonight and I will allow him to make an exit. Besides, I cannot be sure that I will remain in control if tensions rise. The death of Rhea's servant bothers me on a fundamental level. I do not know if Sinead anticipated how deeply upset I would be, and I am starting to think that he would have done it anyway. There was something a bit spiteful in his demeanor tonight, though it did not seem aimed at me. He was still more aggressive than normal. He was still quite obviously trying to dazzle me, and he did succeed. I suspect he was also punishing me for underestimating him, only, he had remained playful so far. Could he be jealous? No. No, it cannot be. Not someone as detached and arrogant as him. Surely the tension is getting to his head. If he were truly jealous, he would not be going after all those other women, would he? Would he? Pa, stop it, Ariane, this is all in your head. The walk back to the hold is a lonely one, until a mage sprints from the direction of our camp. Miss Ariane, the man asks, out of breath. Yes. Councilman Frost says that something happened. He was resting his eyes when he got a dream message from Marquette. Mage Merritt was attacked. She is grievously wounded. And the assailants took her kids. What? Ollie hummed a song under his breath. A second later, a heavy fist crashed against the metal frame of his cage. Shut up, you little shit, or I swear I'll. Enough, Garrett, you know the rules, a distant voice interrupted the guard before returning to plotting or some such. The furious man gave Ollie a death glare, and what a glare that was. With one eye. The other wouldn't open and the skin around it was red and all puffed up, courtesy of Ollie's fire 3 days before. That was when those ne'er-do-wells had taken them and stabbed Mom, but now he knew she was fine, so the thought did not make him all sorts of upset anymore. The man finally turned and continued walking around in that thing they called doing a patrol. Ollie thought it was just silly. If you wanted to catch something, you needed to hide first. All this walking about and grandstanding. Stupid. The men who caught him were not hidden at all. They were sitting squat in the middle of a forest like a bunch of idiots with huge fires going so that anyone with sight and more smarts than a roach could find them. They thought they were safe on account of having papers and permits and there being a bunch of them. Just stupid. Look at them standing around and worrying like old hags after church. Ollie hated them. Next to him, his sister Sked with a haughty voice. She smoothed the ratty cover they had been given to better warm the little kid with frizzy hair by her side, whom she seemed to have adopted. And never mind that Lynn was barely 2 years older than the slip of a girl, if that. They were all young, the children in this cage. They were all casters too. Some had even been sold willingly, like Boulder. By his parents. Others had been taken, like the girl Lynn was looking after. Nobody knew her name on account of not a single word going past her lips. Ollie thought she might be a mixed blood. She had pale skin but her hair was like Nami's. So that means taking her would be easier. Those bastards. The anger kept Ollie warm, mostly. The children used to be cold and hungry but now they were just cold, because yesterday, Birchin had found them and snuck in and given everyone some meat pies. Even the adults in the other cages had not noticed the slippery vampire. Those shackled men and women were black, and he thought they were escaped slaves. Urchin also told them that Mom would be fine. There was this white cabal mage called Sola who had come to train people in healing magic, and she had saved Mom. Ollie thought he was going to cry. Mom was going to be alright. But now he was still stuck in that annoying cage, and he had also dropped his shoes on the way here to make it easier for people like Urchin to follow, so he felt uncomfortable and his socks were wet to boot. The anger once again made his heart all warm. Wisps of fire kissed the skin of his hand. But he wouldn't use them. Too many adults anyway, and besides, he wanted to see what Aunt Ariane would do to them when she arrived, which would be real soon. Honestly, what were these people thinking? You cannot hide a band of pricks and their kidnapped victims out here in the boonies. Not from mages with tracking spells and a bunch of vampires. These men were just dumber than a rock collection. The bunch of fools was still arguing about the attack and whatnot and cussing up with great energy. He could hear it from here. The prize will make it worth it. The Pike family has a huge bounty for the two little twats, a man in a pink shirt and dark beard told the others. Ollie thought what a fat lot of good it would do them, and good luck with collecting that thing in the afterlife. Bullshit, probably just a lucky hit. She was laughing the whole time. Mad people, I tell ya. Shut up, Francis, no one asked you. We have the kids now and quite a few besides, 2 more days of travel and we're going to be rich. Are you now? A pleasant male voice asked from somewhere on the right. The camp fell silent, but Ollie grinned from ear to ear. He exchanged a glance with his sister who was smiling too. From the darkness under the branches, a man emerged. He wore a perfectly tailored blue ensemble under a bowler hat and leather shoes that looked completely out of place in the frozen mud and dirty snow. That would probably be hell to clean it if that man had been human. Sunk right to his heels he would have. But that man wasn't human, not anymore. As Violet would say, Urchin cleaned up nice. He still looked like some kind of outlaw though. But the kind that robbed rich people with pretty words. Urchin smiled a sinister grin as he twirled a silver dollar on his knuckles. He launched the coin, which disappeared mid-air only to reappear in his other hand to get thrown again. That was some trick. Tink. Tink. The game continued. Nice trick, asshole, you got another? Someone asked. Urchin kept doing the same thing, but he had replaced the silver dollar with a wicked-looking knife. The others recoiled. Who in the devil's name are you? The man in the pink shirt finally asked with a voice that was trying really hard to be angry. In answer, Urchin's smile widened. Men and women with muskets and mage gauntlets slowly emerged from the undergrowth in silence to form a half-circle around the poor sods. They came from all ages and some looked rich while others, less so. Some wore traveler clothes, others wore a sort of white uniform, and some other yet wore winter city clothes lined with frills and fur. The only thing they had in common was how mightily bad-tempered they looked. Ollie jumped in surprise when a cold aura washed over him. Melusine dropped from the top of their cage, gave them a gander to check if they were fine, and returned her attention to the front. The men in the middle were jumping around like headless chicken and squawking at every newcomer. There were a lot of those. Maybe 40 to 50 people, more than twice the numbers of their abductors. It was entirely too much, but Ollie could not blame his rescuers for being irked on account of being quite irked himself. The idiots now huddled in a circle. Most had left their guns next to their packs, and the mages among them probably felt the collection of auras rolling around the clearing, each more incensed than the next one. It did not matter much that they could not grab their guns. It would be as useful as a garden sprinkler on a house fire when she showed up. Oh, here she was. Silence descended upon the clearing because something really big was plotting the earth on its way there. The Marquette group now looked on with hungry eyes, like people who came to the circus to see a lion eat its meal or something. Stomp. 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 Métis entered the clearing with that proud gait of hers, and to her sides there were two huge wolves. Were those werewolves? By God, they were the size of ponies. The wolves sniffed the air and then focused on the pile of men in front of them. They showed their fangs and thick drool dripped down their maws. What a show that was! And still, not a pip could be heard. Ollie could still not believe that Ariane had werewolves as minions. That was almost as intimidating as her full battle armor plus shiny spear. And the silence. That was the thing. The wrath of a vampire was always silent. Oh, they would hiss and roar sometimes at the start, but when they got going there would not be a sound. Like when Ariane and Nami were sparring. You could hear the spears swooshing and clashing, but that was it. No steps, no grunts, no cries. And that made it even scarier, because they really showed what they were. Finally, Aunt Ariane spoke. You are bold. Quite bold indeed, the Lady of Marquette declared, her voice echoing across the clearing. Normally she would probably say something witty, or at least try to, but Ollie knew why she didn't. Ariane was livid. Her aura smashed into the kidnappers like a cold front. Even the non-mages recoiled and cussed up a storm. Ollie turned around when his sister closed her eyes and placed a protective hand over those of the little girl. The kid let her do so, too busy munching on a meat pie to object. You might want to look elsewhere, folks, Ollie warned the others, but it was all for nothing because Melusine had taken a tarp from the ground and was putting it on the cage to block the view. Ollie still managed to hear what came next. Which one, urchin? The man in the red shirt, he answered with a sinister voice. Ollie still thought the shirt was pink. Very well. This one lives. Dispose of the rest. What followed, Ollie could not see, but it was very violent and very short. Also, the wolves howled. The action was to the front of the cage, but its entrance was to the left. Melusine dropped down once more and approached it. It spelled. The man with a missing eye got the key, Ollie explained helpfully. Melusine did not reply. She put her gauntlet against the keyhole and whispered something in their weird tongue. Ollie felt the spell unravel and then Melusine tore the gate open, lock and all. It made her instantly popular with Boulder, he could tell. The others were a bit more scared, so Ollie stood up first and extended his arms so Melusine picked him up and lightly placed him on the ground after a brief inspection. You are a bit pungent but otherwise unharmed, she observed. Ollie looked right long enough to see an arm fly off and decided that, perhaps, he should look to the other side instead. He was one of the oldest kids and he was well acquainted with Melusine here, so the others should listen to him because he was the wisest and most knowledgeable man nearby. Right. Come on out people, we don't have all night. Busy, he said while radiating confidence. Lynn had finally managed to coax the girl up and they were all lifted in the air, checked for defects, and then delicately put down. Hello, I'm Boulder, said Boulder with far too much enthusiasm when his turn came. HRM, hello Boulder. A pleasure, Melusine replied with little apparent interest. Once Boulder touched the ground, he turned his big honest face to Ollie and whispered. She said it was a pleasure to see me. Ollie was a man of the world and he thought that she did not mean it exactly that way. Sometimes, adults really liked to say things and meant something else and vampires did it as well. For example, when Ariane said, go ahead and try, what she actually meant was, if you do try I will slap your face off. Life was complicated sometimes. Eventually, all the children were down and Violet, who was a nice lady with messy brown hair and a really colorful aura, came and picked them up. The mages and soldiers freed the captured slaves and soon, there was a big convoy ready to leave to make camp elsewhere. Where there was less blood and other stuff on the ground. As everyone left under the light of torches, Ollie drifted to the back of the line where Ariane was waiting right behind a man and a woman wearing entirely far too little stuff for this weather. Lynn wordlessly followed him with the little girl in tow. He was not sure where she got the meat pies she kept nibbling on. Eventually, he found himself looking up to Aunt Ariane, who was on foot at the back of the column. That meant Métis was probably having a meal right now. She gave all three children a passing glance before resuming her vigil, looking right and left, and listening for pursuers. "Is Mom really going to be fine?" Lynn asked in a voice that cracked a bit at the end. "She will make a full recovery, but she needs a lot of rest and could not come with us. You can see her as soon as we get back to the White Cabal compound." Ollie nodded, but he was still a bit out of sorts. As a man of the world, Ollie had to plan and account for everything so he could protect Lynn and Mom until he grew up enough to kick ass and take names himself, pardon his French. "Aunt Ari, I don't understand," he started. Technically Ari was not his aunt. It was just Lynn who started to call her that, and though Ari grumbled a bit, she let it go. Now, everyone around thought Ariane was their relative, and that meant Lynn could ask pretty much anyone to do her hair. "Aunt Ari, how could these men just come and take us? I thought they were bounty hunters." "They were slave catchers," she said with obvious disgust. "Their job was to go north, and arrest escaped slaves to bring them back to their old masters. Being a slave catcher is legal, but it does tend to attract the unsavory types." "You mean they respect the law, but they are bad people?" Ariane gave him a measuring glance. Ollie knew she would do that every time she was going to explain something a bit hard. It didn't mean that he was stupid, just that she didn't know how much he understood. Adults were like that sometimes. They forgot how different they were at 5 or 9 and how much they understood of the world. Yes. The people in Congress passed a law a long time ago. It says that any escaped slaves can be recaptured at any time of their lives, and if the slave was a woman and she had children, they were the property of the old master too. One thing is that when a black person is caught, their testimony is not recognized during a possible trial. Ollie furrowed his brows as Lynn tilted her head and Ari paused her explanation, recognizing that this last part was a bit too complex. Meanwhile, the little girl gobbled the last of her meat pie, then dug another half-chewed pastry from the recess of her grubby dress. "What it means is that what the black person says does not matter to a judge. The slave catchers can just show up and claim that someone is an escaped slave, and if the local authorities find their documents convincing enough, they will be taken south and sold. It makes many of the slave catchers opportunist jackals who will kidnap freemen. That kind of mongrel will also take children from the streets of my city if they believe they can get away with it, because what is one more innocent victim?" she finished with a low hiss. "So, they could come back?" Lynn asks, looking rightfully afraid. Ari stopped inspecting her surroundings and focused her raptor-like attention on the girl at her side. Then she took Ollie's and Lynn's hands in hers. The vampire's fingers were cold outside the armor, but Ollie did not mind much. If those specific curs come back, they can start their own religion. As for the other bounty hunters, they will lose the incentive to come after you once the bounty is lifted. "You think you can convince our dad's family to do that?" "There has to be a lot of them," Lynn asked shyly. Aunt Ari did that thing again where she didn't move or breathe. Sometimes, he wondered how she could look so much like a normal person one moment, and so different the next. "Indeed. I made a point last time and I assumed the rest of the family had understood the message. It appears that I will have to use more pointed arguments. It pleases me that the first instance of an alliance of humans, mages, wolves, and vampires in recorded history was assembled for the purpose of rescuing children. Now, I will make sure that such an opportunity never rises again." Ollie looked at the column on the road in front of him. The carriages were turning into an estate with guards at the front. That was probably their own camp. He did not know yet what would happen to the rest of his father's family, but he assumed that it would be very unpleasant. He thought it strange that he was defended by a monster against the crimes of his own blood. A bit crazy, he judged. That was fine. He was a man of the world and he would make sense of it, eventually. Marquette, 3 days later. Lynn raised her hand to knock on the door, only for Ari's voice to tell her to come in. She closed it behind her and made a beeline for the vampire. Aunt Ari was sitting in a comfortable chair, with a proper table by her side on which she had placed a few documents and a cooling cup of coffee. The heavy scent hung pleasantly in the air of the small but cozy study. The thick walls were also blocking the humdrum of the building, maids preparing dinner and clerks joking and laughing as they wrapped up work for the day. The only thing missing were windows, but Ari had a very sensitive skin, apparently. Ari did not raise her eyes from the doodle she was drawing in her notebook. Lynn knew that she would do preparatory work before she started painting, and that was part of it. That also meant that the vampire was not working at the moment, and that was the best time for a conversation between proper ladies. So, Lynn went to the opposite couch and sat herself daintily, smoothing her dress in front of her. Aunt Ari raised her eyes and put the notebook down. Lynn frowned a little bit as she caught a glimpse of the drawing just before Ari closed it. There were a lot of naked people in it. That was strange, because she was rather sure that it was not really proper. Ignoring that, Lynn smiled pleasantly and decided to start with small talk. Starting with small talk was a mark of good education. It showed interest in the other party and allowed one to learn about the other and their priorities, or so Violet had said. Also, gossip was fun. Are you leaving for Boston soon? Yes, tomorrow in fact. You will be safe while I am gone, I assure you. My dad's family has made a fatal mistake. The man we captured revealed quite a few unacceptable practices, and now both the cabal and we are moving against them. Lynn thought gossip would be more fun. What about the werewolves? Mom said a lot of things about werewolves when we were kids. She said they were very dangerous. They are. Those who moved in are, well, they are different. A group of werewolves together can police themselves and its members do not suffer from the curse as much. I also trust their leader to comply with my orders. He has proven himself worthy if a little too talkative. Lynn did not know what to think about that. Werewolves were dangerous. Many werewolves were even more dangerous. And Aunt Ari was very fast and strong, so they were not as dangerous to her as they were to Lynn. On the other hand, Aunt Ari said they obeyed her and that meant dangerous people on her side, and that was usually good. Okay, she replied, but Aunt Ari frowned. Not you too. What? This okay thing. The acronym of a purposely misspelled all correct. I first read it in a Boston journal and now it has spread everywhere, including here, she grumbled. Lynn kept silent. She had heard that from a traveling salesman and thought it sounded nice. Probably just a fad, Aunt Ari continued, something this silly cannot possibly become part of our everyday language. Then, seemingly recomforted, the vampire nodded to herself before returning her full attention to Lynn. Say Lynn, what do you want to be when you grow up? Rich, beautiful, and with a good husband who loves me, and I love him. I meant what sort of occupation, Ari continued seriously. Oh. I want to be a mage that tells people what to do. Like Mom. Aunt Ari tilted her head, doing that thing again where only a small part of her moved and it gave her the appearance of an animated sculpture. She and Melusine were like that. They moved little and moved slowly until they were provoked. Then they moved too fast to see. Urchin was not there yet, Lynn judged, on account of being just a bit of a clod. He was doing his best though, and as Mom said, that was what mattered. The White Cabal has offered to train you and the other children we rescued when your talents have matured. That will be very soon for Oliver. You should consider their offer as well. Lynn frowned because it sounded a bit like a test, maybe. She remembered that Mom had said something about the White Cabal being allies, not friends. That was before they saved her life though. What was it she had said? Are you not worried that they will, poach us? She asked. They will try, just as I know what the Cabal is like and why some resent its leadership. How should I explain? They make a lot of rules and talk a lot, and some find it annoying while I give a lot of leeway to those who assist me. A wise man once said, "It is better to be first in a village than second in Rome." Lynn wondered what Rome had to do with anything, but the quote sounded very smart, so she just played along. And besides, she thought she understood what Aunt Ari meant. The white cabal were a bunch of stuffy dunderheads while Ari was proper and well-tempered and did not insist on Lynn going to bed before 9. So obviously Lynn would want to stay with Aunt Ari. That made a lot of sense. I think I would like to learn from them as long as they do not force me to wear white, she eventually decided. If they were going to teach her how to set things on fire like Ollie could, then it was worth an early bedtime for a while. Then she realized that the conversation had gotten serious and now she wanted to go somewhere else. "All right. I am going to see Métis," she declared. "No feeding her ears or she will grow fat," Aunt Ari warned. Giving Métis ears was really fun, so Lynn decided to negotiate a bit. "Why were you drawing naked people?" she asked innocently. "Maybe I should ask around if it is proper and if I should do it as well." Lynn waited in silence as Aunt Ari gauged her, and as expected the vampire eventually smiled at her antics. She always liked it when Lynn tried to manipulate her a bit. Yay! Lynn ran out of the room and picked up Wisp, who had not moved from her spot and was currently inspecting a painting with her sad brown eyes. Wisp was not holding a meat pie, which probably meant a resupply run was necessary. "Shall we go to the kitchen?" Lynn offered, and Wisp nodded with energy, her dark frizzy hair bobbing along. They climbed down the polished wooden stairs past offices and to the ground floor. The kitchen was at the back and would serve dinner soon. The enticing smell of stew and fresh bread wafted from behind the door, and the clang of pots went hand in hand with the din of conversations. Lynn opened the door and was greeted by the massive form of Irma, casually cleaving a pig leg apart, bones and all. The old woman scowled a bit at the intrusion, only for a large grin to replace it when she recognized the newcomers. "Good evening, Irma," Lynn said with a small curtsy. "If it isn't the young lady Lynn. And Wisp. Are you ready to tell us your real name?" the woman asked the diminutive child with a laugh. Wisp twisted left and right and squirmed a bit, which only gave Irma a throaty laugh. The large woman delicately placed her cleaver on the cutting bench and cleaned her hands on her apron before turning to them. "And what do you want?" "It is still a bit early for dinner." "I would like one caramelized pig ear, for Métis," Lynn solemnly declared. Irma reached for a glass jar and popped the lid open. Lynn soon had a large brownish and slightly sticky ear which she then folded into a bit of cloth. While her back was turned, Irma made a show of sneaking Wisp a pair of small meat pies. The tiny girl rewarded the cook with one of her rare smiles. As soon as they were loaded, Lynn bowed one last time and ran away with Wisp still in tow. They snuck out into the courtyard and past heavy doors to Métis' enclosure. The shack was part of the normal stable, yet everyone gave it a wide berth. Lynn was not surprised. When she entered, Wisp let go of her hand to climb to her designated crate. From there she would watch Lynn do her thing. Lynn herself was not sure why Wisp liked high places with a good view, but that was all right because she sat with grace and poise and her back straight. The room they were in had a low plank wall surrounding the place where Métis stayed when she felt like it. It had hay and a large barrel of cold water, as well as a ball and a pillow placed on a pole to rest her head. The Black Nightmare was present and she recognized Lynn immediately. Her massive frame now stomped forward, bumping her head lightly against Lynn's chest and pushing the girl back with a small poof. The horse's face was large enough to cover Lynn's whole torso, though that wouldn't last because she would soon grow as tall as Irma, just you wait. Métis made that big, snuff sound, easily picking up the scent of the pig ear. Lynn giggled and held it in her hand. Métis had her ritual. She would slowly eat half of the ear little bit by little bit with great care, then gobble the rest. Lynn let her do that, and then moved to pour water in a smaller barrel. That took a while because she was still not so strong, but after a few minutes, she had a decent amount of liquid. She then went to the bison herb crate and removed a handful of the perfumed stalks, which she threw in the prepared water. She then grabbed a tool that looked like a giant spoon made out of wood and slowly stirred the decoction like Aunt Ari had shown her, feeling like a proper witch. As soon as she started, Métis placed her head over Lin's shoulder and stared, mesmerized, at the strange tea ceremony. Nightmare successfully captured, Lin thought to herself with no small amount of satisfaction. When Métis decided that it was enough, she gently pushed Lin out of the way and sipped on her brew. While she did so, she allowed Lin to brush her, which the girl did with pleasure. Métis' coat was strange. It was surprisingly smooth with a sort of glassy quality that other horses did not have. Petting her was fun and pleasant and completely ladylike, and Lin did it until Wisp cleared her throat. The small child pointed outside, and Lin realized that indeed, night was falling. So, they had to meet with the others. The pair of children rushed out and left the nightmare to her contemplative mood. Outside, Lin half coaxed and half bullied a guard into doing her hair by casually dropping Aunt Ari's name, which never failed. Then, they ran through the streets of Marquette to their designated hideout, which was at the back of one of the many warehouses Ari owned. Ollie was already there, checking a large bucket for leaks. Boulder waited nearby with his large arms crossed before his sturdy chest. Boulder, whose real name was Herbert, was tall and strong for a kid, and his own magic made him even stronger for a while. That would be really useful tonight. "You're late," Ollie exclaimed. "A lady is never late," she retorted while pushing a braid back. Her brother rolled his eyes and passed the bucket to Boulder, who held it without difficulty. Yeah, whatever. Are you two ready? It's almost time. Let's go." Lin shouted, excited at the thought of larceny. Well, technically it was called pulling a prank and was expected of children her age, really. She had heard some of the cooks say that many times. That meant it was okay. Also, they did it to Maxwell, who harassed girls and liked to punch people, so, really, it was more like punishing the wicked. Therefore it was totally ladylike and the right thing to do, and there were no ulterior motives at all. The four of them ran down the street as inconspicuously as children carrying a bucket and an eager expression at nightfall could manage, which Lin admitted was not a lot. Fortunately, the inhabitants of Marquette were happy enough to be heading home and no one bothered them. They soon found themselves in a backstreet, the kind that serviced several workshops. One of the buildings let out a slightly unpleasant smell of burnt sugar, and this was where the band's efforts would be focused. Lin placed herself facing the back door and Wisp stood by her side while the boys took position behind the opening, so they would not be immediately seen by anyone coming out. They did not have to wait for long. A young man stepped out with a heavy gait. He had a squarish jaw, boorish features, and he was rather dirty. As soon as he spotted Lin, his malicious eyes narrowed. Lin breathed in and blew air in front of her. It helped her focus. Wisp clasped her hand and did her thing. Lin felt her power expand under her friend's influence, covering the entire backstreet like a cloud. It bumped against three presences. Two of them she recognized, while the third was a tangled mess of loathing and resentment. Then she drew a deep breath in and swallowed the tangle. The man's mouth, which was half open to cuss or threaten, suddenly slackened as his eyes grew hazy. He stumbled a bit before managing to stand like a drunkard about to collapse. Ollie and Boulder wasted no time grabbing the door. Ollie snapped his fingers and a plume of fire lit in there to illuminate the now darkened store. They went in. In the meanwhile, Lin's focus was on the little ball of hatred in her mind. She held it still. It was a pretty little mess, and she recognized some of the strands. That one was wrath against the other regardless of who they were. This one was self-loathing. And that one was envy. She was tempted to pull on the strings to see what happened. She had felt Aunt Ari do so on occasion. The vampire had made it look easy and quick, but Lin was not so sure. She thought it could change someone for a long time, and she did not know how exactly. It was just that Maxwell was a horrible person, and surely there was this strand pulsing green and sickly. That one was despair. It was buried deep, but it also merged with everything else. If Lynn were just to pull on it a bit more, weaken the red angers and inflate it until it took everything over and drowned them under its thick mantle, perhaps. Eventually, timing made the choice for her. The boys quickly left the store with a now filled bucket, which even the strong boulder had trouble pulling. "Let's go," Ollie whispered. Lynn let the boys disappear at a corner while slowly walking backward without breaking eye contact, Wisp still supporting her. Then she released the link and disappeared in the shadows. She caught a glimpse of Maxwell shaking his head with obvious confusion, and then they were gone. They walked to the black side of town without hurry as the deed was done and the urgency had passed. There was still tension in the air as they lifted a plank off a wall and slid under, ending in a cluttered backyard where 3 black children were waiting for them. There was one plump boy in a blue overall carrying a basket, a girl with shorn hair and a taller boy with a beret and a red bandana. The two groups approached each other until the tall boy spoke first. "You got the goods?" "Right here." "You?" Ollie retorted. The other pointed at the basket they had and leaned forward to inspect the contents of the bucket. It was molasses, thick and syrupy. There was enough sugar in there to produce cakes and pies for an entire street. 3 bags of candies, 2 of hush puppies, and 2 tarts. Ollie shook his head. "For 4 and 2, don't try me Moses, we both know that's the only molasses you will get before April." The tall boy shrugged. "Not my call, Fireball. We only got 3 bags of candies and you know the hush puppies will get bad before you can finish them. I can get you another tart after my mom's done. Throw in a medium jar of jam and some jerky and you got yourself a deal." Moses considered it. "I guess." "Fine. But I don't have the rest, so you'll get it tomorrow. Same place, same time." "You bet." The two groups exchanged the bucket for the basket and soon, both were on their way with Wisp already filling her pockets with candy. Lynn hummed under her breath and considered that this stroll had been most educational and vivifying, whatever that meant. Aunt Irene Mom spent a lot of time liberating stuff from bad guys and keeping it for themselves so obviously that was ladylike behavior whatever they said in front of her. Lynn decided that once she was an adult, she would be the most ladylike of them all. She then picked one of the candies and placed it on her tongue. It tasted quite sweet. They stashed their loot and returned home, no one the wiser. February 3, 1834, Boston. "Congratulations on your success, Ariane of the Nerari," Constantine declares with all the enthusiasm of a city clerk delivering a building permit. "You are now the legitimate ruler of the state of Illinois with all the duties and rights entailed. Said duties and privileges are mostly about ruling properly and answering a call to arms in the event of a war. Thank you, Speaker. Now, what shall I call myself? Queen of Illinois? I highly discourage traditional nobility titles, especially that of sovereign," Constantine scolds. He reflects for a moment, then concedes, "Given the size of your territory, European vampires would give you the title of Duchess. I, however, prefer the term head. Boring. Well, we shall see what the others call themselves. I never considered that before. Are there any other heads I know of? I ask, clearly showing my disdain of the unassuming word. Constantine still does not understand that the trappings of power need to be solemn and awe-inspiring. Perhaps he will never learn. Of course. There is me. I am the head of Massachusetts. You also know Kuaku, who recently took over Louisiana with the blessing of the Rolands. Sepher rules Washington and Yerrick is settling in the Texan territories in Mexico. Of the Cotties, you know Suarez who rules the Carolinas and Siren who commands Florida. The Roland twins rule over Mississippi and Alabama," he continues in what I recognize as his lecturing tone, until he catches himself. The speaker frowns and when he speaks again, his voice is slightly clipped. "You do not need me to give you a lecture. I am sure Wilhelm will be more than happy to enlighten you. I know for a fact that he will not. The Ehrenwald steward is far too busy handling the day-to-day affairs. In any case, here is your official deed, not that it matters. A formal acknowledgement is all you need. Will you be hosting a celebration here? I was planning on it. Good. Once more, congratulations Ariane of the Nirari. I will be following your progress with great interest, he finishes before returning his attention to the pile of documents in front of him. I understand that I have been dismissed and stand up from the couch. I make my way out of his elegant office. I cross the antechamber and nod at his two mysterious bodyguards, as well as to Sophie, the Rosenthal renegade, who returns a congratulatory smile. The only surprise comes from the corridor. Lord Siren is waiting, standing in the middle of the hallway in an elegant old-fashioned suit. His piercing blue eyes turn to me and he shifts his muscular frame to give me a light bow. I did not even know he was in the city. As usual, etiquette is everything. I return a low curtsy as a gesture of respect. We may be political rivals, we may have different allies and assets. None of this matters when two vampires come face to face. I am a newly minted master and he is a centuries-old lord who could control his essence before my ancestors even stepped on this continent. Deep inside, I can feel the power he wields, and my instincts urge me to show respect, and so I do. Congratulations on your victory, Ariane of the Nirari, he says in a neutral voice. The Cadi's lord's countenance betrays no sign of aggression. A mortal passing by could assume we were talking about the weather. Thank you, Lord Siren. My condolences on the loss of Reyes. He did not deserve it, I tell him honestly. I agree, still, it does not lessen your extraordinary achievement. The Lord's eyes glisten dangerously. It is coming. Tell me, how did you manage it? He casually asks. I feign ignorance at the implicit meaning behind his question. The old monster is fishing, just as Sinead predicted. You would be amazed what you can achieve and you treat other species as more than food, I answer honestly. My face is completely expressionless because what I said was the absolute, undiluted truth. I just failed to clarify which specific race I was referring to. The Cadi's nods slowly, before stepping to the side and letting me through. We part ways after a last polite exchange, and he enters Constantine's domain. As soon as I know with certainty that I am alone, I allow myself a victorious grin. Nami was right. Gloating is our guilty pleasure. I do not take part in the purge of the rest of the Pike family. The reality is that there are few of them, barely 20 including their retainers. Slave hunting was a valuable business that gave them a cover to abduct young casters with no formal training and induct them, twisting their minds with sick games to better serve them and cull those who would resist. As unpleasant as they may be, they do not present a challenge, therefore I let Urchin handle this issue at his insistence. I may be annoyed, but I am also busy. The White Cabal gets massively involved as well and our two groups find unity in common hatred. With this concern out of my mind, I return my focus to settling my affairs. Melusine is granted the title of city master for the future cities of the north and she decides to settle in a tiny place called Chicago, which she assures me has potential. I also organize a party to announce my ascension and invite all of the Accords to attend, knights and recently arrived Lancasters included. Finally, Blake of the Roland sends me an interesting letter offering a trade agreement between her new holdings and mine, which I accept after careful consideration. With this lull in activity, with no one actively trying to kill me, rob me, or take over my lands, comes a time of planning and introspection. Painting all those new sources gives me all the time I need to ponder on the recent developments. I am only interrupted once, when I realize that a small version of the Watcher I drew over a large group of naked werewolves in human form turned into a nightmarish nose with tentacles coming out of the nostrils. Truly, an abomination that came from the recess of a completely twisted mind. Fortunately, I blink, and the image is gone. I still look outside to the cosmic entity and get a feeling of placid innocence. Sometimes I wonder how close the blasted thing is to full consciousness. Except for this small distraction, I am mostly left alone with a fateful question, one I had so far avoided. 2 decades ago, Loth came to me after a particularly playful display of cruelty on my part. He advised me to develop a set of rules to follow when dealing with my foes, an advice I elected to follow. He was, as always, right. The laws I defined that night helped me keep myself grounded. Rather than base all my decisions on instinct and emotions, I set up a semi-permanent set of rules that could guide me through clouded judgment and moments of extreme stress. I have the feeling that I broke that law in the previous contest. More specifically, I broke the law on how to deal with enemies who did not commit acts I deem unforgivable. Reyes was not at fault for Siren's decision to encroach on my territory. I did not consider him responsible for the backstabbing, which is the most important factor. Yet, he was tortured by the loss of his servant, an event which I caused by unleashing Sinead on the Cadi's faction. It would be dishonest of me to say that I am not responsible for the Lycaean's action. You do not put a snake in a crib and complain about venom. I knew he would inflict untold torment on a group who represents everything he resents about my kind. I relished it. It made my essence sing in anticipation. So, in some ways, I broke my own code. It matters little that it was through an agent, I knowingly let it happen. What surprises me is that I would not feel worse. I realize that when I set the code, I allowed myself some flexibility in the future. It acts more as a guideline than a dogma. Now a new situation has come up and I have to decide whether or not I should amend it. Should I accept the devastation caused by my allies or agents in a conflict? I do not believe so. It is a poor tool indeed that escapes its wielder's control, or rather, a poor wielder who allows their tool to destroy what was meant to remain untouched. In this regard, I erred. I could have set boundaries within which Sinead had to operate. I did not, because I was angry. I do not feel remorse. Vampires are distanced from guilt in a way that only the sickest of mortals are. I do, however, believe that I made a mistake. I will offer no reparation for the damage I caused, as it would be suicidal and idiotic to reveal my role in this fiasco. Instead, I will remain vigilant and take responsibility for the behavior of those under my command. Yes, this seems wise. After coming to a decision concerning this issue, I feel better. I accept that perfection will never be within my reach. Decades of hard work and immunity to the ravages of time will not change this fact, yet there is no reason not to keep trying, not to improve. It will take a miracle to stop either my sire or his insane mother. I might as well start by learning self-control in times of intense emotion. Speaking of emotions, there is one invitation letter I need to deliver in person. February 10, 1834, somewhere in the Appalachians. I stalk my prey with patience and determination. My feet are silent on the wet loam. No twig cracks under my steps and no hanging branch snags my clothes. I am on unknown land but on familiar ground. The forest extends far in every direction, and in its midst, a secluded cabin with a vast underground serves as home for my quarry tonight. Soon, a clearing comes in view, and in it, 3 people are standing. I recognize the mysterious bald woman with the tattoos on her bronze-colored scalp. The second one is a man with the lost look of a fledgling. He possesses a sturdy frame with just a bit of paunch and a bushy yellow mustache. As I watch, he closes his eyes and listens to the sounds of the forest. I remember being overwhelmed too on the first night I left the fortress. The last man has his back turned to me. Perfect. I approach and climb up a large pine, taking additional care as to not draw attention. The figures below appear oblivious. I grin at the prospect of capturing my prey. It will be glorious. I place both feet against the trunk at my back and push, arcing delicately in the air. Torin's back is close, so close. I extend my arms and try to grab his back. Ha! Gotcha Ewararg. I scream as the tall man grabs me by the throat without looking. He flips me like a crepe and slams me into the ground, not as heavily as he could have. Oof. My lungs are emptied of all air. Torin's face is just as handsome and slightly intimidating as I remember. His hawkish traits show cold anger, but I recognize the twinkle in his eyes. My dear servant, please take Hardy inside while I deal with this intruder, he says with mock menace. I look up to see the bald woman take the fledgling on his way inside. She is smiling knowingly. Now then, what shall I do with this little spy? Torin declares teasingly as he drags me up and holds me by the collar. I channel a smidgen of Hastings' essence and struggle like a mortal, letting my feet dance a little jig. There is a dangerous glint in his gaze now at the show of fear. How did you even know I was coming? I object with a choking voice. You masked your aura well and you came from downwind, but you forgot an important detail, he whispers in a husky voice. Then he pulls me in so that my back is against his chest. I still cannot touch the ground. His breath tickles my ear. Your dress flaps in the wind like a mighty sail. I groan. What? A portent? Is Torin a seer? The man himself turns to face the forest trail leading to the clearing. There, between two leafless trunks, a certain nightmare observes us with curiosity. Métis. You treacherous backstabbing silly pony. No ears for you. I sputter in outrage, but alas, the vile two-timing harridan neighs in a way that sounds suspiciously like a laugh before galloping away. The wench. She ruined my surprise. Now then, little spy, tell me why you have come. Feeling cheated by fate, I wiggle my butt against my captor in a pretend attempt to escape. I do not miss his groan. I will only speak under duress, you big monster. Just try and interrogate me eep. Half an hour later, I am thoroughly interrogated and rather grateful that the log cabin's curtains happen to be drawn. I am playing with Torin's hair and pulling it above my lip to pretend I have a mustache when he finally speaks. Congratulations are in order, I believe. You know. I exclaim with surprise, blowing the gray strands away. Of course. I asked Salim of the Rosenthal to keep me apprised of your success via mage sending. Ah, were you going to ride to my rescue? By the Watcher, you really were. No. No, but I did buy an option for the Rosenthal mercenary branch in case the task proved to be too much, he concedes. Thank you, Torin, I say, genuinely grateful. No need to thank me, my star. I knew that you would succeed. That was merely for my own peace of mind, he replies while avoiding my gaze. My, what a little fusspot. In any case, I actually came here to deliver this. I proudly announce as I pick up my dress and remove a folded paper from a conveniently hidden pocket. Torin opens it carefully before reading its contents. A celebration of your ascension with both a reception and a private concert, featuring the works of Schubert, Chopin, and Paganini, he notes with the beginning of a smile. Once more I am amazed by how quickly he goes from stern and severe to radiant. I find the transformation uncanny. I have recruited two different mortals to play the piano. One has a classical education and the other is a prodigy from a poorer family, more unstable but also more expressive. For Paganini, I have called upon a newly come Roland vampire. Paganini's caprices are designed to be displays of skills, so a highly technical approach will work, even if it remains colder than what humans can achieve. An excellent choice. I notice that you have picked only recent composers as well. Do you wish to convey a message? One of embracing modernity, yes, but I also wanted to give those who have stayed here for a long time an opportunity to enjoy Europe's latest creations. How very thoughtful of you, my star. We will see if those old grumps appreciate novelty. You think they will not? I ask, scandalized. Torin only chuckles at my vehemence. Honestly, I am doing my best to bring them recent masterpieces. I would be profoundly offended if they did not show proper appreciation. Any grumbling will be met with a scathing silent glare. Repeat offenders will be tooted at. I will show no mercy. Do not concern yourself overmuch, my star. Even the crustiest of lords appreciate a good show of human creativity, and a display of technique from a fellow vampire is always a pleasure. Everything will be fine, he replies in a conciliatory tone. February 21, 1834, Boston. Winter came to the bay for one parting slap, and the air outside is bitingly cold. Standing in the ballroom of Constantine's fortress, one could not tell. Hundreds of candles line the windows and the back mirrors, their warm glow turning the vast hall cozy. The walls radiate a soft heat thanks to the miracle of good plumbing, and those of us who still breathe have discarded shawls and gloves to luxuriate in the pleasant atmosphere. Just like last time, I have stayed at the door to welcome newcomers, and I am already noticing some major differences. To begin, everyone is significantly more polite. I would like to think that this was caused by my sterling behavior, my good manners, my irresistible charm, and the previous undeniable displays of competence on my part. That would be nice. Unfortunately, I will attribute it to the Lord by my side. Torin the sole weaponsmith stands protectively with my arm in his. Lady Hastings and Lord Suarez, who came from Charleston to offer his support, are never far. The Cadi's presence is modest after their setback, so his coming is that much more significant, and I let him know I appreciate it. Think nothing of it, us Cadis are not ones to hold grudges for an honest fight. You did well. If he knew the truth, we would be having a different conversation. After half an hour, it is now time to start, and the crowd progressively switches to front seats. Wilhelm helped me assign them, for which I am grateful, otherwise I would have just given up and gone for alphabetical sorting. Constantine and the other lords are at the front, naturally. I step up the dais at the back of the room and feel their attention on me. Once more, all the present members have subdued their auras. I take a moment to appreciate the masterwork piano Wilhelm lent me for the occasion. It sits there, slick and black and entirely massive. I am really looking forward to this. Ladies and gentlemen, noble assembly, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I am delighted that we have enough room tonight, seeing that perhaps a quarter of my clan is present. That gives me a few nose exhalations, as well as knowing looks from the lords at the front who know that there are, in fact, 4 of us. The others would assume that I refer to a hypothetical spawn. This land is one of opportunity, I start, and stretch my hands in a gesture of offering. This sentence is as true for us as it is for the mortals. 3 decades ago, I was indentured to another clan, and did not even possess the clothes on my back. Tonight, we have gathered to celebrate my ascension as head of a territory. My success is not due to skill, or luck, though they played their part. I am here because of the opportunities one found and seized for myself, and so can you. Some of the younger members shift in their seats, eager to know how they could replicate my success. We are still parts of our respective clans and need not forfeit our traditions. We can, however, cast away the chains that tie us down. Past grudges. Past prejudices. Those prisons of the mind hamper us and limit our vision and options. I started in this world with no allies, but also with no enemies. Akkadi's freed me, an Econ trained me, and I was proven innocent by a Lancaster. My path was made possible by the people who helped me along the way. Look to your left and right, and you will see your allies of tomorrow, if you so choose. No one moves, but I see that quite a few people are thoughtful. Others remain unconvinced, which I naturally expected. Now enough words. I promised you music and you shall receive it. Tonight, young and newly arrived artists will present you with works from recent masters, those who have known how to draw upon the classics to create a new current. Please give them a warm welcome. I finish. I quickly step down the dais to invite the first performer of the night. She had been waiting at the back with a plump old relative acting as guardian. The girl is young, with a severe and rotund face. She steps forth with all the grace she can muster and climbs the few steps under 100 predatory gazes. She goes through the motions of curtsying with the rigidity of an automaton, then, as she sits before the massive pianoforte, her demeanor changes. She turns more graceful and more fluid. In less than 10 seconds, she has shed any trace of anxiety and the music rolls free under her delicate hands. Schubert's sonata is beautiful and energetic, and the girl plays it well. Her interpretation is classic and scholarly, but here and there, she teases a different tempo or a daring forte that hints at the character underneath. She is like a blooming flower struggling against the cage of rigid training, and the others like it as much as I do. I can feel it in their immobile attention and carefully controlled auras. When she is done, the assembly gives her the applause she deserves. She smiles radiantly before stepping down and joining the now ecstatic plump woman on her way out. I smile and grab Torin's hands, who gives me a supportive squeeze. The next artist enters the room. He is a young black man, barely a day above 18, accompanied by an older man with white hair and the tracking eyes of someone who never lets his guard down. Amusingly, it is the elder who shows obvious hints of fear. He can tell that something is off by our expensive clothes and the immobility we affect when we are amongst each other. His weathered face turns gray and his grip on the shoulder of his protégé tightens. A few of the youngest courtiers shift at the obvious show of weakness. The pianist, however, remains unfazed. His stare has not left the masterwork piano since he entered the room. He frees himself and jumps the few steps up to the object of his fascination, belatedly remembering to bow on the way. He plops himself on the seat and plays a few arpeggios. His thin fingers dance on the black and white keyboard with the speed of knitting needles. Finally, he settles and gives us Chopin. I will admit that as much as I appreciated Schubert, the Polish-turned-Frenchman has my favor for the night. I am sure a true critique would find the perfect words for the music and compare him to great masters, but since I am a neophyte and cannot, I will satisfy myself with the simplest of terms. The music is alive. It represents everything that we have lost and cannot possibly find again. It is clear to me that Chopin is or was a virtuoso, and the nocturne played before us shows signs of a man improvising and searching as he plays. Some repeated sentences flow into each other in their hunt for elusive perfection, and the artist knows it. The young man's style is flowing and smooth, and his movements are never twice the same. I love it. There is so much innovation here, so much life. Never have I so clearly understood the appeal of the mask faction. To be the shepherds and the hands in the shadows, pushing civilization and fine arts forward. I can certainly understand. Far too soon, the piece is over and the young man blinks as he seems to remember where he is. We applaud him with enthusiasm, and he steps down shyly to rejoin his guardian, who fearfully pushes him out. Both of the players tonight will be paid and sent on their way safely. There is little need for additional precautions. The last performer makes his way in. He is a Roland courtier by the name of Yves, with close cropped blonde hair and brown eyes, who holds a violin as if it were a treasure, and perhaps it is. The mood of the assembly changes slightly as we now judge the artist with different criteria. Yves bows slightly and starts without ceremony. I admit to being impressed. Paganini's caprices are the playing field of the technical genius, and Yves proves his worth with sober and measured movements. Complex melodies cascade over us at inhuman speed and with exacting precision. Not a single note is out of place and not a single interval is missed. In the middle of this impossible show, the courtier still manages to instill a few marks of originality and personality. It does not hold a candle to what the mortals offered us earlier, but we still smile appreciatively as we all know how difficult we find it. That last part ends quickly by virtue of Yves' speed. We applaud him too with benevolent appreciation and respect. Soon after, we stand up as he steps down. The humdrum of conversation is immediate. I pick up words of pleasure and wonder in Akkad as well as in English, to my pride. Torin smiles and he wordlessly takes my hand in his, caressing one finger after another with a light touch. For the second time you gather us and share your love of the world and its wonders. Thank you. Of course, I am a woman of exquisite taste after all, I reply without seriousness as I place a hand on his chest. Torin chuckles warmly. Indeed, and although you like to mislead your enemies and allies alike through your love of gunpowder, there is, as you have taught me, no incompatibility between pyrotechnical violence and the sensitivity of the gentler sex. My own bloodline could learn a lot from this lesson. Torin. I reply, amazed. I will never repeat those words before my faction's grumpy elders, of course. I have a reputation of cold disdain to maintain, after all, he finishes with a grin. TCH. I care not about them. I only care that you approve. And I do. Ah, if we could have an organ here, my star. His eyes turn dreamy and I find myself smiling too. A few other revelers use the lull in our conversation to come and express their gratitude. I wish the artists themselves could have mingled, but alas, they are still young and it is quite late, and I agreed to let them go. It is for the best. They burn bright and the allure might be too much for some of us. Constantine comes to greet me on his way out. The tall man does not enjoy celebrations, it seems. A capital performance by your guests, House Nirari. I find your choice quite pleasing. Thank you, speaker. Of course, he would. It was all very polite and consensual, just as he imagines the world should be, and will be tonight. The truth is that no agreement will be reached before dawn comes. Plotters and schemers, sycophants and the mighty will make tentative gestures and contact the more receptive audience at a later date. My party is neutral ground. The progenitor leaves soon after. I can tell that he makes efforts to mingle but they feel somewhat forced, while smoother conversationalists like Sepher flit from group to group, firing smiles and witty repartees like others fling arrows. The accords will not survive long under their current structure if our numbers keep increasing. Only his personal might has kept him at the top so far. Our next notable visitor is a man with black hair that reaches the nape of his neck. He has an angular face with a large nose and a pointy chin. With his dark coat and trousers, he looks like a prince's tutor or a stern college dean. The impression is smoothed by the genuine smile he wears. Ah, Ariane of the Nirari. I am delighted to see another patron of the fine arts join our modest numbers. There are too few of us in these as of yet untamed lands. Thank you for your kind words, Lord. Something to do with music. Madrigal, I finish, with a hesitation that he does not miss. He is a Roland as well, though seemingly less stubborn than some of his kin. Splendid. You remember the name. Ah, to be entirely truthful, my name was Jean Paul, but alas it was already taken. I named myself Madrigal to show my love for vocal composition in the typically childish fashion of those who do not plan. I am now stuck with it. It could be worse, you could have called yourself leader, I remarked teasingly. I was not stupid, the man castigates without any real bite. We all smile genially. In any case, this is a busy evening so I will be brief. I act as an ambassador of sorts for the Roland faction in Europe, and I extend a formal invitation to visit our lovely Nadir, he continues. Nadir? I ask. Nadir is the capital of masks in Europe, my star, Torin explains. It occupies some of the catacombs below Paris, with surface access to many inner courts and buildings. As drilly accurate as it is irrelevant, Lord Madrigal replies with a hint of condescension, Nadir is a center of art and politics. We have masquerades and games that the mortals can only dream of, set in an oniric locale transfigured by generations of artists. Some were even sane. Torin does not rebuke the man, though they exchange a glance I cannot decipher. I think they know each other from before. But I digress, the sharp man finishes, just know that we will always welcome such a connoisseur and that should you plan a trip to the old world, you may contact me. I will make sure that you are received with all the honors. As I have already taken too much of your precious time, I bid you a good night. We all bow and the man departs. I might just be tempted to travel to Europe, if only because Torin will return to his home territory as soon as his fledgling is mature enough to travel. Before it happens, I have something to finish. Jonathan's pale figure wavers as a lapse in concentration destabilizes the sending. The mage Salim let me recovers and I continue our conversation. Are you quite certain? I ask. Yes, he is your best bet. You surprise me, Jonathan. I expected you to try and keep this in-house. It would be counterproductive. Your growth will be slow, and I need to maintain your flawless image, he retorts with a smile. Jerk. Besides, you asked me for the best and he is it. Go and meet him. If he does not measure up to your standards, I have others who could. And how shall I approach him? Directly, of course. The more direct the better. Impart upon him the, shall we say, unfortunate consequences of refusing your offer, the Cabal Black Dog replies with a ghastly smile. He would also not be an opponent you wish to intimidate, would he? I ask with a frown. He is not. With that said, the White Cabal could certainly impress upon that man and his associates our power and our reach. Think of it as payment for this nugget of information. Good luck, Ariane, the infuriating man finishes before cutting the link. I hope he is right. March 13, 1834, Philadelphia. My secret lair is ready and well protected. The local Roland Coven gave me their approval, and it is now time to finally take the next step in my snail-paced yet inevitable plan to take over the world. I pick a cheap pamphlet from my official dress, the blue one that would look nice in a salon and can also stop a bullet fired at point-blank range into my heart. I unfold the now wrinkled paper and inspect my notes. The door facing me is as innocuous as the 5 others in this place of half-abandoned brick factories, save for a specific sigil that looks like the zodiacal sign of the lion. I find all this cloak and dagger nonsense too amateurish to be amusing. Let's see now, I grumble. There it is. I find a dial conveniently hidden behind a greasy piece of paper. Old Lady Grayson sausages, 5 cents apiece. And turn it. 5, 6, 1, 9, I whisper. Nothing happens. Maybe 5, 1, 6, 9. Clank. With the ominous sound of rusty hinges, the massive gate swings open to reveal the impenetrable darkness below. Not absolutely correct, of course, it reveals a downward set of stairs in good need of a sweeping. I also notice strands of energy hanging in the air like a spiderweb. Probably an alarm system. I poke one out of politeness and the whole construct folds on itself like a mousetrap. Runes set in the wall a few feet ahead ignite and throw a bolt of lightning which I casually deflect with a charged claw. Rude. They still shine purple, I notice. It feels strange to bring the light of the Watcher into the world of the mortals. They do not deserve to gaze upon its alien glow. Or perhaps I am being snobbish. With a sigh, I lift the heavy bag by my side and descend into the unknown, which end up 20 steps into another corridor blocked by another pane of reinforced planks. I knock politely. A deep and unsettling voice reverberates throughout the damp air. I easily recognize an intentionally garbled sending. You are not welcome here, dark creature. Return to the night from whence. Look, we can have this conversation face to face or not at all. There are limits to how much bad taste I can tolerate. I said, return from whence, foolish woman. Thine path is barred by the stoutest of. I boot, thine path, where I think the opening mechanism is, and the old thing bangs open, smashes against the wall and half closes again. My door. Banners wearing eldritch symbols hang from the wall, which would be more impressive if the fabric was not so cheap and if the runes did not spell air, fire, water, and increased body weight. Between those amusing works, bookshelves filled with manuscripts of forbidden lore as well as cookbooks and at least one children's songs compendium mark the den of a powerful mage. Said mage stands inside of a small stone building, a building within a building, if you will. I also note a few more doors on the side and far walls as well as a lack of ceiling. The space above us is empty as far as the roof of the factory and its dirty glass skylight. It all looks like a good idea with poor execution. Besides the mage, 3 more beings occupy the cramped space. 2 are clearly apprentices in ratty red robes that look like theater props dug up from a mass grave. The third one is more impressive, and I look forward to some interaction. Away, foul fiend! Away! You will find no easy prey, for you have entered the chambers of Ezekiel the Red. Away, I tell thee, the man vociferates. He is indeed a redhead, with a sharp and manic face covered by a wild beard, a hawkish nose and rare green eyes. His hair reaches below his shoulders in a good attempt to mask an advanced case of bald spot. He seems tall and gangly, though it is hard to tell for sure behind a robe in marginally better state than that of his wards. Let me consider the question, I answer, and I tap a claw against my chin. No. Hellblast. A plume of fire erupts from the mage's gauntlet. I grit my teeth as my instincts cry out to jump and, instead, angle my chest out of the spell's trajectory. The roaring missile passes me by and crashes against unyielding bricks at my back. I pretend to brush ash away from my shoulder. Truth is, that was quite hot, and my dress might be singed. Bloodbath, the man yells, undaunted. This time, I dance away from the lynx even as they pursue me. Lambert of the Lancaster used a similar spell and I know what to expect. It takes a few seconds for the mage's focus to falter, which is quite a long time given the complex path the bindings followed. It speaks well of the caster's ability, if not of his wisdom. Anything else? I ask in a bored voice. It matters not, Ezekiel the Red spits as his 2 students grow more and more nervous, you will never breach my sanctum. I smile at the challenge and approach the single door leading inside of their safe room. The obstacle is made of reinforced steel with an opening sealed by vertical bars at head height and some respectable enchantments. I am not confident that I could destroy the lock, especially not with a caster able to reinforce the defenses as I work. I will, of course, not waste my time on such a stupid method. I grab 2 bars and place my feet against the walls on each side on the opening, careful that my dress does not ride up my legs and gives the quartet an eyeful. Once in position, I channel the Natalie's and werewolf essences and pull. The metal hinges groan until, with a last tortured crack, the masonry gives way. It only takes a few pulls for the heavy piece to finish in my hands. I set it down on the side with deliberate slowness. Inside of the safe room, the mage and his pair of dunces have crawled against the walls with faces of unmitigated horror. The last occupant is a golem made out of an old knight armor and some nifty bone constructs. It stands ominously, holding a slightly rusted mass in its ivory hands, exactly like Jonathan described. You my guardian will make short work of you, night creature. It has no blood to drink, nor mind to corrupt. Oh no! I retort with a flat voice as I drop the heavy bag I was holding by my side, I am undone. A golem, my very obvious and totally unexpected weakness. What am I to do? I rummage inside the bag and drag a 3-parts handle which I quickly assemble into a stick the length of a quarterstaff. If only I had planned and brought an appropriate tool. I continue in the same dead voice. I pick a hammer head from the bag and screw it on the handle. The hammerhead is an inelegant work of steel with a single silver pane at the point of impact. The pane itself is engraved with a single rune that spells, shatter. Even my own budding skills are enough to charge such a simple and specific apparatus. It will hurt, too. The mage observes the barbaric tool, aghast. He inspects his creation and the harbinger of destruction in the hands of she who just popped his door from its frames, bricks and all. He calculates his chances. It does not take long. Can we talk about this? Certainly. We may even have started with that if you had not attempted to roast me. Really? What is it you want, exactly? I mean, state thine will, foul fiend. For a moment I consider roaring and spreading a bit of terror, so he stops with the nonsense. In the end, I consider them soiling themselves to be counterproductive. Is this little treasure hunt you're doing? I ask, holding the pamphlet. The crumpled piece of paper was published in a journal and advertised the secrets of the universe for those who could decipher its code. Ezekiel led me on a merry chase, one that required the ability to perceive magical workings to complete but was otherwise as boring as it was obtuse. And now, here we are. Certainly. Then. Yes, I am here to learn magic. I could shove a fist in the man's opened mouth. I refrain from doing so. And you will teach me, I finish. The gauntlet lets out a pathetic little ball of blue light, barely more than moonlight reflected on a soap bubble. The light shimmers lightly then winks out. So, that was a success. And now I get to do it all over again. Light, the young witch by my side declares. A few seconds later, a shimmering burst erupts from her gauntlet and basks the moldy walls in its reddish glow. She cuts the spell and the shadows creep back in. Our eyes meet before she quickly averts her gaze and returns her attention to the exercise. The corners of her mouth creep up in pride. I allow it. I am a vampire of many talents. I am good at painting, shooting, basic engineering, forging and accounting. I have a reasonable head for finance and diplomacy, and I have good taste in friends. And men. Truly, my skills are many. Magic is not one of them. I am, simply put, below average. This is an unfortunate fact of life and can only be offset by time and no small amount of effort. I knew it would be so. I was warned. That is why I do not begrudge the pallid girl her pride and return my attention to the training gauntlet on my left hand. Magic is made of 3 components. The first is power. I have that aplenty. More than Ezekiel the Red himself. And yes, Ezekiel is his real name. It turns out that devouring so many mages and having such a concentrated essence is a boon. I can hypothetically cast more spells, or more powerful ones, than even an experienced mage. The problem comes from the 2 other elements. The second is symbols. There is a need for a focus of sort, a physical representation of the desired effect to guide the energies. Some research Loth mentioned proved that even symbols made of light and shadows can be used, though they are less effective than something more concrete, which is, in turn, less effective than metals or worked materials. The symbols can come from many different systems. What matters is that they mean something to the caster. Loth had a theory that the more people use a system, the more powerful it becomes. It could explain why Western Standard is so popular. The best systems are the most flexible ones. Western Standard allows for complex sets of instructions for more specific working, a bit like a language. The Lycian system is similar, but I decided to stick to Western Standard for now. 1. I do not want to reveal too much, and 2. The Lycian system is based on its language, which is itself magical. It is, therefore, a crutch. I want to learn the hard way. A magic user needs to understand the symbol and the system at a fundamental level to wield it with any degree of mastery. My own study has progressed over the last decades, and though it is by no means perfect, I am still far above the average apprentice. No, the difficulty stems from the third part, the will. Mages need to visualize and bring forth the desired effects, and it is simply something that I have extreme difficulties with, barring some notable exceptions like the darkness spell. Calling my will forth is a bit like flexing a muscle that I never knew I had. Anger does not help. Thinking hard does not help. The mental effort fails to match anything I have done so far, including aura control. While the two others manage with commendable efficiency, I was not born with it, and need to learn from nothing. Magic is as unfamiliar to me as the sun. I am not just a talentless player learning the violin, I also need to do so while wearing mittens. Despite the frustration, I endure. I lift my gauntlet to look at the rune of light. I easily push power inside of the receptacle and attempt to visualize a ball. I can see the simple image in my mind, but it lacks substance. Light is not just the light that I can see, it is light that everyone can see from different angles. It has a trajectory. A ball of light has a depth. I do not rush. I do not force it. I proceed with calm and patience with the belief that, in time, I will gain in speed. Slowly but surely, something takes form in the back of my mind until a sort of trigger clicks, like figuring out the answer to a riddle. Light, I whisper again, and another ball forms in my palm. I stare at its pale blue surface before dispelling it. Once more. We go on for 15 minutes, then Ezekiel visits both students, giving insightful pieces of advice. He then stops before me with visible hesitation. "May I?" he politely asks. I nod and place my hand in his. He flinches slightly when they touch. Ezekiel's gangly form stands straighter as he focuses on casting the spell himself. He could do it in an instant, but instead he takes the time to clearly visualize his process. Through contact and mind magic, he shares his impression with me so that for an instant, I know how to cast the spell with perfect clarity. Light. A reddish orb rises from the man's gauntlet. It shines there like a bright star, serene and immortal, and not like my own flickering thing. Then Ezekiel withdraws his hand and I grasp at the memories of what I just experienced, and it works. Little by little, the man shares his own knowledge so that I do not have to search for understanding, only reach it. I am already making progress. I have the time to cast twice more before the teacher calls the class to a stop. The two others unclasp their gauntlets with visible relief. While I have reserves aplenty, they are still quite young, and I understand that continuous casting has a deleterious effect. It tires the mind and renders the mage unresponsive and dull until they have had time to recover. Ezekiel quite capably alternates theory and practice to prevent his human pupils from burning out. Jonathan was correct, the man knows his craft. The two red-robed youths sit at their desks and I join them. The boy's name is Terence. He is a painfully thin stick of a man with a prominent Adam's apple and an unfortunate face that is made constantly melancholic by two droopy eyes. The girl is shorter, with hair as black as soot and a slightly chubby face under two piercing dark eyes. Her name is Margaret, and she reacts with violence to being called Maggie. They are quite different. As far as I can tell from my eavesdropping, the boy wants to escape a life as a shoemaker and his domineering mother. He is as hard-working as he is unimaginative. The girl has a chip on her shoulder and an insatiable drive for power that I can respect, even if I think it will burn her. Terence is also hopelessly in love with Margaret, who noticed his toad-like puppy eyes and decided that she wanted nothing to do with it. At least she has standards. As usual, the three humans look at me with a hint of worry, even when I am on my best behavior. Ahem, Ezekiel begins as he attempts to regain his composure. Tonight's class will be focused on blood. Indeed, no one understands the vital liquid like us blood mages. Heavy, awkward silence. No human, in any case, the man finishes sheepishly. He then proceeds to explain an important aspect of magic, the addition of concepts to standard castings. Bolt, for example, is a basic spell made out of 3 runes, forward, power, and impact. The ubiquitous firebolt is constructed by adding the concept of fire to the power of the construct, turning the projectile from one of force to one of fire. It makes the casting more difficult, but turns the spell from a heavy blow to setting things on fire. That is particularly useful when your opponent can just shrug off that kind of damage. Now I understand why I have never been submitted to the standard bolt. It would have been absolutely pointless against me. Ezekiel continues his explanation in a measured tone, stressing the important words to make sure we understand. Margaret raises a hand. Yes. Ezekiel asks. Then why are we not learning any of it? She asks somewhat belligerently. Ezekiel, who is apparently not dealing with his first batch of power-hungry idiots, has the appropriate response lined up. Because the first step in learning blood magic is to train how to work without it. You need to understand what you can do without its dangerous power. Only when you have found your limits can you safely overcome them. To my surprise, the girl appears convinced. I realize that the students really do look up to Ezekiel and why he treats them with respect, something that they had apparently been missing. The class continues with theories on glyphs that I only half listened to. This is all known to me, but being part of the normal class is part of my arrangement with Ezekiel the Red. The canny wizard agreed to teach me in return for a substantial monetary compensation and an obligation on my part not to interfere with his other students. The man has principles, I will grant him that, though he applies them strangely. For example, he has granted his 2 students a room in his derelict factory-turned-secret lair at no additional cost. Terence even considers it his home, as a quick verification showed that I could not enter it uninvited. It still irks me that walls and a door can suddenly become an unbreakable sanctum that no amount of effort allows me to peacefully penetrate. With the power of belief, those are the 2 things the more rational part of me find difficult to accept. Ezekiel did not just offer them a safe haven. His training is comprehensive and he only asks from them a reasonable amount of money, to be returned in a manageable time frame after they graduate. He has garnered quite a reputation. On the other hand, he is an occasional contract killer. He also serves as muscle and otherworldly security to Philadelphia's criminal underworld. I keep staring at the man lecturing us in his ridiculous opera prop costume under the yellow light of candles. He who has the blood of many on his hands, many of them possibly innocent, yet still took these youths under his benevolent guidance at a symbolic price. The dichotomy between murderous rake and fatherly figure is so poignant that I am led to wonder if we vampires truly are set apart from mankind, or if the magnificent sods simply delude themselves with ideas of universal values and self-obvious ethics. At midnight, Ezekiel finishes his classes and the exhausted little idiots retire to their quarters. Ezekiel usually teaches at night due to, he claims, some alignment of the spheres. I suspect that it has more to do with the mysticism that the night offers. Also, the shades hide the general rattiness of the setting. I stand up to leave when the gangly educator stops me with a hesitant voice. "One moment of your time, please, Ariane of the Nerari. I have a proposal for you." "Do tell." I answer, curious. This is the first time in a week that we exchange more than trite pleasantries. "There will be no class tomorrow. There is a task I have to complete," he continues. I glare. Our agreement was a bit vague about an exact timetable, and I fully expected him to take some nights off on account of having to assassinate some poor idiots, break into houses and whatnot. I am therefore not shocked that it would occur. I do not have to inform him of this fact, of course. I assure you that I will respect our agreement to the letter. It does not change anything. We will merely be delayed for a few hours. I assume you have a point. I drily ask. Yes. Of course. I am to visit a certain place and retrieve a certain item. And you want my assistance for this burglary? The man coughs heavily in his sleeve and clears his throat, red with embarrassment. Nothing of the sort. My destination is a hotel of some repute and I merely ask that you stay in its main hall and cover my retreat. You are expecting trouble, I state. And you expect me to stop them? Yes. I do. You may do with them as you wish. And their leader is a man by the name of Salazar. He is a talented warlock, and whom I was led to understand that you are a woman of refined, he swallows nervously. Palate. I am intrigued. And also, a bit annoyed. Surely you are not implying this is payment for my service. Of course not, he energetically replies, I would never dare. No, I will also give you access to all my personal spells. Ah, now we're talking. All of them? Well, I only made a dozen, but I assure you that they have been praised in all the right circles. And they are efficient and of middling difficulty. You should be able to cast them all within a few years with a reasonable amount of practice. I have a custom-made tracking spell that can use even a single piece of hair. That is, in fact, a great deal. Ezekiel is high on the list of able blood mages, and he is very clean in his casting. Anything he creates would be simple and efficient. By comparison, it will be decades before I can master the contents of the human skin tome my sire sent me as a gift. In the end, I negotiate for the spells plus his help in learning one of them. After we are done, he retreats to his personal quarters and I exit the building via the now repaired door. Southwark greets me in all its dubious glory. Warehouses, docks, and trades bustle with activity during the day as Philadelphia digests coal and enough food for its tens of thousands of citizens. Now, they are mostly silent, especially in this more remote area. To the north, the strip that is the city proper shines in the night, nestled between the two dark arms of the Delaware and Schuylkill rivers. I don my cloak and slowly walk to the affluent part of town, confident that I am not being followed and that Neshoba's earring still protects me from tracking spells. I cross the last tract of open land to the geometrical chessboard that is the city proper. Sober buildings of red bricks line its streets, interspersed here and there by the white stone of churches and official buildings. Even at this late hour, gentlemen in crisp and conservative clothes head home, speaking English and German. There are still a few trees, though I understand that they have grown rare, cut down to build houses for the ever-expanding population. Philadelphia might no longer be the political capital, and finance may be moving to New York, but it remains one of the continent's largest cities. It is also one of the oldest, and the vampire population reflects this. Philadelphia used to be under the purview of Lady Berenice of the Roland, but she left recently to manage her clan's expansion north. Reigning in her stead is a master by the name of Noel, whose hospitality I purchased at a decent cost. I am his guest, benefiting from his protection and company both. I walk unmolested to Arch Street and step inside a multi-storied brick building that looks exactly like every other multi-storied brick building around it. A doorman bows as I go by, and I enter a lavishly decorated lobby. The contrast with the sober exterior remains jarring, even after a week. Vampires can only tolerate so much Puritan sobriety before our love of art and decorations fights back. The conflict between personal preferences and the need to conform sometimes lead to such dens as this one. I make my way up a set of stone stairs. I allow my feet to bury in the luscious red carpet beneath, luxuriating in its soft plushiness. Servants and a courtier salute me as we come across each other, and I soon arrive before a massive door. A knock, and I am invited in. There, the building's perfume of vanilla and cleanliness turns to coffee and sandalwood. A quiet fire burns in the office's hearth while behind the large desk, a man greets me with a smile. Noel is a thin man with aristocratic tendencies and a thin mustache. His auburn hair is combed back and he wears close-fitting clothes of the latest fashion. There are few official documents on his workspace. Instead, his workspace is covered in notes, correspondences and fossils enshrined in glass containers. He places one back down with great care as I come in before ringing a bell. I sit down before him with a smile. Ariane, always a pleasure. Likewise. How is the new specimen? I politely ask. Noel is a great supporter of paleontology, which is, as I understand, the study of long-dead stuff. Not to be mixed with archaeology, which happens to be the study of long-dead people. I lost interest when he said there was no physical evidence of dragons ever existing. I do not look down upon this historical science and its practitioners. Rather, I am much more interested in a slew of more practical studies like chemistry. I still allowed Noel to teach me the basics for the sake of conversation. Delightful. It appears to be a sort of shelled insect never seen in our current time. Who knows how many millennia, nay, tens of thousands of years ago this thing walked the earth, he exclaims. He then frowns. Or more accurately, crawled, he finally admits. Any progress on a dating spell? Yes indeed. Unfortunately, we face the problem of reference points. I am considering the acquisition of a fragment of an antique tool to act as a base. Possibly Greek. Fascinating. I wish you good fortune in this endeavor since you would also need a way to accurately date the tools. May I suggest Pompeii and Herculaneum? The cities are still being excavated, I politely suggest. In Italy? Yes, of course. And we know when the city was destroyed, so we can assess when the tools were made, give or take a decade. Brilliant. I wait for the man to feverishly write a message while a human maid comes in to bring me a cup of freshly made Arabica. I sample it with pleasure, letting the bitter taste linger on my tongue. I apologize, the master finally says, was there something specific you wanted to talk about? Yes. I have received a request for protection by my esteemed teacher on a visit tomorrow. I wanted to clear it with you as I expect violence. Whose territory does this concern? Yours. It will take place on the southern end of the city. Then there is no issue, he answers dismissively before returning his attention to a note. I raise an eyebrow at that but refrain from commenting. I am but a guest and he is city master in interim. How he conducts his affairs is his concern. I sip from my cup in the following silence. Noel makes conversation for a while and I soon leave. I know when someone would prefer to be left alone to play with their new toy. I still have quite a bit of time before dawn. As usual, I start with my correspondence. Marquette works well without me. All communities are in balance with clearly separated territories and rules to handle any dispute. So far, there has been nothing that would require my presence. I hope that this week's mail will not prove any different. In any case, any urgent business would reach me by sending. Torin is busy elsewhere. I open the first letter, which comes from Merritt, and peruse its contents. The werewolves ate a patrol of Gabrielites. We don't know why they came because Jeffrey's troops apparently consumed everything including the satchel containing their correspondence. There are few means of communication that can survive a trip through a werewolf's digestive tract. Moving on. Jonathan's wife Sola returned to their home base and is expected to stay there until she gives birth. Marquette now has 3 acceptably trained healers. Good. John has successfully settled in the West with his family. At the thought of my lost ally, I feel a moment of disappointment. A small part of me still clamors that he was too valuable to be let go. It says that the man was mine until death and that I should have bound him to my service. This possessive drive is part of who we are, but listening to it is not always wise. We are incredibly vulnerable during the day and the one thing that can kill us is treachery brought by resentment. Forcing him to stay would have not just been dishonorable. It would have also been unwise. Next. The segregation law of Marquette has been lifted and anyone is now free to circulate anywhere. Excellent. The issue of slavery is still a burning topic everywhere in the nation, with Philadelphia firmly on the side of the abolitionists. I wonder for how long these tensions will last. Finally, the children are settling in. We rescued quite a few and I volunteered to have many orphans settle in my town. With Sinead's bastards, we now have a new generation of potential mages growing up. It will be a challenge to train them and to keep a significant proportion away from the white cabal. We might be allies, but we are also in competition for talents. I write a short answer to acknowledge reception and suggest that, next time, the werewolves backtrack the patrol's path to its origin and finish their meal. I seal the envelope with wax and place it in a basket designed to that effect. The next letter is a financial recounting of my assets. I own or have shares in a respectable amount of Marquette's businesses as well as factories in the East. Amusingly, the spirit of the frontier is one of independence and autonomy while, in my opinion, they should rely on communities. Few individuals and companies want to borrow or share ownership. They would rather labor for decades before finally opening their long-awaited companies than be indebted for 5 years and profit for 15. It does not make sense from an economic perspective. The world is a strange place. I open a few more letters and make appropriate answers, then comes the time for self-study. I take my training gauntlet and fasten it, then visualize the light spell once more. Time after time, I cast. The work is difficult and repetitive, but I do not mind. The spell grows incrementally more familiar after every hour of practice, and, every time the sphere appears, I feel a little bit of satisfaction. I am still learning, growing, evolving. Soon, I will add to my arsenal its most versatile element. It is only a matter of time, and I have plenty of it. For now. I sit on one of the Crossing Hotel lobby's many couches. The red leather monstrosities are placed around a decadent coffee table, and their heavy musk almost overpowers that of tobacco. The monotonous ticking of a clock is the only sound breaking the silence. The receptionist took one glance at Ezekiel and I before deciding he would be better off somewhere else. I idly inspect my surroundings. The plaster and fresh paint do a good job of creating the illusion of understated opulence. I assumed that this would be a good resting place for well-to-do traders for a few days. It remains depressingly empty now. The blood mage stepped up one of the twin sets of stairs and left me here to intercept the forces inevitably coming for him. Since I have a few minutes, I rummage in my shoulder bag and take out a few notes. They contain supplementary visualization exercises that Ezekiel made for students who struggle with it. They look entertaining and easier than a real casting. One of them consists of imagining the tracing of a cube. It is a cube spell. Completely useless but for the exercise itself. I flip the pages and realize that one of those small spells would in theory permit me to move objects at a distance. It does appear useful in itself. Unfortunately, it falls under the category of advanced exercises. I am still reading when the double door bangs open and a group of hard men in leather outfits barges in with fury. I count 5 separate pulses without turning my head. Their auras are that of experienced casters, especially the first one. He is domineering and tastes faintly of ash. She's with him. Kill her, the lead man orders with the uncaring voice of the consummate professional. A dark bolt leaves one of his subordinates' gauntlets and slams against my patiently erected shield. The shield holds and I am almost overcome by giddy pleasure. My first shield. And it worked. To cast it, I did not use my gauntlet. Instead, I drew a circle and a few runes on the ground in silver powder. A worthwhile, if costly, exercise. Rude, I mumble, somewhat annoyed now that I realize I have been attacked. What happened to courtesy? I finally turn to the attackers and quickly inspect them as another spell is prepared. The leader is in a dark outfit. He has black hair and beard that jut from his face and head at a sharp angle like so many jagged rocks. His face is too sharp to be called handsome and his eyes are dark brown and piercing as he assesses me. The others are a motley crew of younger men, all fit and alert and eager for violence with their flaring nostrils and palpitating hearts. Which, the leader alerts, and he and another form shields at the head of the formation while the others focus on unleashing some deadly and complex constructs. I sigh and stand up, closing my book with a resonating snap. Tonight, I do not wear my training implement. The focus clamped on my wrist is bulky and on its back, a single rune drawn in blood shines an ominous red. The twisting script is not Western Standard, oh no. It is much, much older. I raise it and unleash my aura. The wave of cold washes over my opponents in a frigid tide and a few flinch. Their leader's face whitens. I can feel it now. Even as I weave and call forth the spell, the edges of the room already darken. Shades creep over the floor and along the wall like prowling creatures. Lycaean is the language of magic. Before I can even say the word, it already exists within the space we stand on because it is concept made sound. I am only casting it now because having a cover of darkness is an invaluable tactical advantage that I kinda sorta vaguely could use and absolutely not because my slow progress annoys me, and I want to show off. New SH. We surrender, a voice shrieks in the mostly empty hall, interrupting me. Ah. Light returns and I am now just standing and holding my gauntlet forward as if it were an unwieldy weapon of dissuasion. The leader is waving his hands in the air, shield discarded. His followers stare at him with a mix of confusion and disbelief. We surrender. We completely surrender. Please do not kill us, he states with a strange smile, even if I can see the sweat dripping down his brow and taste his fear in the air. His aura flickers in tone with his nervous heartbeat. You do? I ask as I lower my hand and raise a brow. Yep. We give up. Won't get any trouble from us. No ma'am. Half of the group now stands down with the lost feeling of someone suddenly drenched in cold water. Only one remains belligerent, a tall lad with a bristling blonde mustache. How curious. I usually have to kill a few before the others realize the futility of their actions. My friends here might be new, but I remember when your, previous local ruler made her presence known. We did not know a being of the night would be here and ask for your forgiveness. That is rather new. I do not believe anyone ever surrendered so promptly before. Wait, is she a vampire? One of the men exclaims. SSH. Be polite, another whispers urgently. You think it will help? A third one answers, dejected. It will certainly not hurt your chances, I interrupt before they start a discussion. Now tell me why you are after Ezekiel the Red. I am curious. My teacher was tight-lipped and it would not do to press him for information under our arrangement. Forceful interrogation would go against the spirit of the contract, an unthinkable option for me. Obtaining information from other sources does not violate my oath, however. Everyone takes a step back. Well, don't mind if I do. I move and seize the man by the throat before he can react. I arc him backward and expose his neck. I bite down. Men swear. The leader interrupts the sanctity of feeding with a whine. Please spare him. I lift a clawed finger to order him to cower on the side. Once I am sated, I lick the wound close and release my moaning victim who quickly stumbles away. I lick my lips. Where were we? Yes. As part of our negotiations for me not to engage in a cathartic slaughter, you are going to enlighten me as to why you are currently hunting my pet. Now, speak, I calmly state to my now very captive and very docile audience. We were just going to ask good old Ezekiel a few things, is all. Heavy silence. And perhaps break a finger or two for stealing. But hey. It's not like they don't heal, right? Haha. Really, it was about the questions. Elaborate. Yes, well, what do you know of our charming little communities of sorcerers and warlocks? Casters really love calling themselves different things all the time. They are just casters. It is probably cultural. My host described it as a nest of vipers biting each other's tails in a large and pointless backstabbing melee. The leader has the grace to look embarrassed and passes a hand in his messy hair. Accurate if a bit unfair. In any case, we have had a slight problem and wanted to make sure your little friend had nothing to do with it. Do tell. Somebody is killing us group by group. I pause. The entire strike team now looks a bit sheepish, like children caught red-handed on their way to some mischief. This might be problematic. I really need Ezekiel to stay alive long enough to fulfill his part of the bargain. I also need to make sure I do not offend Noel by slaughtering the odd killer in his backyard without his license. This outing just became a lot more complicated. I sigh. I am being dishonest with myself. Even if I can guarantee Ezekiel's safety, there is no way for me to tolerate an independent predator on my lone territory. It does not matter that the land, in fact, belongs to a courtier by the name of Clara. It does not matter that she answers to Noel. I cannot tolerate competition so close to my den. My name is Ariane of the Nirari, I finally admit. They call me Salazar. An honor to meet you, the man replies with obvious relief. Tell me more about this killer of yours, I request as I sit and invite him to join me. I am going to regret this.